Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to a very special episode of Arkaden. Yes, I'm doing this intro in English because this whole episode is in English. I truly apologize that you have to listen to this bad accent, but I promise there's a really good reason for it. Because we have a visit from none other than David Jaffe. And if you don't know who David Jaffe is, I can tell you that he is the guy that created both God of War and Twisted Metal. Nevertheless, he has left the gaming industry, and over the last couple of years, he has become a commentator of the gaming industry instead. I have an enormous respect for David Jaffe, and to be honest, I was very nervous when we did this episode. I was super starstruck. We talk about many things, Xbox versus PlayStation, what it was like letting others work on God of War, and so on. But you can't manage David Jaffe. He talks a lot, he's funny, and completely uncontrollable. So we only reached a fraction of the subjects we wanted to talk about. Nevertheless, it was a hugely fun episode, and I hope that experience rubs off on you. But enough talk, let's get the show started. Please enjoy.
Biggest podcast in the world. You know what's funny about this podcast is it never.
Can you say that again? We hadn't started recording.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so I'll just do the intro.
Okay. No, don't stop him. Let him.
Okay.
I'll do the intro. Tell me when to go.
Okay, go.
Everybody, welcome to Florida's biggest podcast in the world. I'll tell you something, we've been doing this podcast since 1967. It's really cool when the sun never sets, because that's the country we live in. Switzerland is the best place to live. Fuck Hitler. By the way, let's talk video games. It is Amos and Andy. That's your intro? Can you use that?
Hello, my name is Andy.
Oh, you got a soundboard. Oh, I'm so jealous. Hello, everybody. If you didn't hear, it wasn't me who did the intro. It was none other than the incredible David Jaffe. Hello.
Hey, is this video going out or is it just audio?
So it's primarily audio, but we started like last October. We started a YouTube channel. We don't have many followers.
Okay, but I just need to know if I could pick my nose and shit. Okay, cool.
You can.
You can wipe it on the camera. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just finished my show, so I'm very high right now, and I'm not literally high, but I mean I'm very I got a lot of adrenaline running, so I can't get. And I'm about to take an Adderall, so I don't know how this is going to go, boys. If you guys are looking for serious, I'll do my best. In fact, help me out with that. What's the tone of this? Do you guys want to be like, no, man, let's talk about video games,
the tone is
design philosophy, or do you just want to be like, fuck it, let's talk? What's
the tone vibe? is unhinged, I think is a good way to put it. Like just basically go nuts.
All right, well, I came to the right place then.
You did.
Yeah.
All right, what's going on, fellas?
So, Mr. Jaffe,
yes.
I am so honored to.
What does that even mean? Here. Aren't you tired of people? I'm not doing a bit. But when people say, like, you see it a lot in the video game industry right now. I saw this the other day where some developer was like, "We are so honored to." Right? What does that even fucking mean? I mean, it's like, hey, I'm excited. You could say, I'm excited that you wanted to do the show.
Oh
my God,
we're grateful.
Yeah, that's cool.
You took time out of your calendar to talk to two Swedish guys. You know, that's
grateful works. Excited, appreciative. Yeah. Honored is a word that it's like, this is loaded. The guy that jumped in front of a tank for me in Vietnam. I am honored to give him the Medal of Freedom. That's, I'm not joking. I just think that word has become, what does that even fucking mean?
You could save our lives one day. You never know. I mean,
yeah, but then I would be able to, you could say that, but until I do, and let's be clear, you're from Sweden. I'm not saving your life.
Okay, you gotta stop, man. Our listeners gotta go berserk if you say Sweden one more time.
I would listen to me. If I could get the visas and shit, I would move my family to the Nordic countries in a heartbeat.
Oh, you should.
I love your politics. I know you guys are. It's an easier country because you guys are kind of racist. Because you know,
what?
Well, somebody explain to me. Tell me if this is true or not. Somebody explain to me the reason that a lot of the Nordic countries don't have the same I know you guys are having immigrant struggles right now, but in terms of sort of racial struggles, is because you're pretty white. I mean, you're kind of, there's not a lot of diversity in your.
That's true.
Historically, we're pretty white.
Yeah,
right. So I don't mean you're racist. I'm just teasing.
No. Yeah, but. Yeah.
So the immigrants started coming to Denmark like in the 90s or 80s or something. So, but yeah, we are becoming a more and more diverse country, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, when cultures and values mix, people get anxious about that. I mean, that's completely understandable, right? I mean, so it's...
It is. I think we as a species handle it poorly, though. We need to get fucking better if we're going to be a really connected world.
We have this tribal mentality, right? It's so hard to let go of. I would say, though, I think the younger generations are... saying no to that, to the racism, and they're trying to be more open and let people in.
Not us, though.
Not us, though. No.
I mean, this is like the Aryan Brotherhood meeting. I except me with the nose, I'm undercover, and I don't know if you can tell.
Okay,
but what I was going to say though is, I'm not even joking. I mean, it's too late now. My kids are adults, and even if they were babies, I don't know how you'd go about it. But I do look at the politics. And the democratic socialism of you guys, and it totally fits the way I would like to, it's a country I would like to live in because of all the stuff you guys do.
You can vote for Bernie Sanders. You can vote for Bernie Sanders, David Jaffe.
I can vote for him here. I did, but there's no shot in hell of winning. But
I think everyone deserves not to worry about whether a health emergency is going to ruin their fucking lives.
Yeah, of course.
I think that should be a human fucking right, just to have access to
education,
competent healthcare and education. I mean, I'm taking a long education. The government has paid who knows, like I don't know what it costs to put me through this, but it's been, insanely expensive, right? And I'm paid to do it. I think that's so invaluable. I mean,
and look, I mean, you're going to have a challenge when you scale that up to the size of a country like America, but that's details though. For me, it's the fundamental philosophy of just kindness. And it's like, we may not be able to do in America everything they can do in, Yugoslavia, where you guys are, wherever the fuck you guys are. We may not be able to do that in America, but philosophically what you guys do is so much kinder. And it's so funny, people say we're a Christian nation. It's like, bitch, no. If you mean Christian as in the teachings of Jesus Christ, you ain't bullshit.
So we actually did a piece where one of our members of Arkaden called Jørgen Bjørn, he went to Europe and Finland where he talked to studios like Housemarque and Remedy, who's from Finland, and what's interesting, talking about like politics and stuff like you are now, is that there are a lot of talent that is not wasted here in Scandinavia because we have school. Everybody can go to school. If you want an education, go for it. You can become whatever you want, more or less. And you can't do that in America, right? So if
you're born wealthy.
I mean, there is a piece of propaganda that is based in enough reality that it's not a out and out lie that in America you can be whatever you want. But you also must take into account, if you're actually serious about that, that the field is absolutely stacked with privilege, whether that's a race thing, a money thing, a gender thing. And it doesn't mean you can't rise above that in America. You have those opportunities, but we don't make it, we don't go out of our way to help people usher in their greatness and contribute to the country with their greatness. We really kind of like to beat people up until their success. And when they're successful, they can only be successful for so long before we have to tear them down. So we're kind of, I love parts of America and I love the idealism of the American experiment, but we're a very, our unregulated capitalism, in my opinion, has created a really mean country. And I think it's not because we're worse humans than you guys in Guam, but I think it has to do with, when you do have that unregulated capitalism and you do not have much of a social safety net, you respond in a way where you have to be selfish, and you respond in a way where you become mean because you're scared of not being able to pay the bills. And I have one of the designers of God of War. Think about this for a minute. One of the designers of God of War, a guy named Scott Rogers. He also was the lead designer of a game called Maximo. I don't know if you guys ever played that from Capcom back in the day. He's a board game designer, did the Alien board game, and did the, he's a really good, really prolific designer. And he has cancer right now. And the motherfucker is literally having to go to the internet and be like, hey, can you guys help me and my family pay for these costs? And it's like, damn, what the fuck is going on?
That's
this
horrible.
Is a guy, I mean, you shouldn't have to qualify for it. No. I was going to say, this is a guy who has provided a lot of entertainment for a lot of people over the years. But even if he hadn't, you shouldn't have to beg for your fucking life. And,
like that's really one of the weirdest thing for a Dane to see, right? That's like the online begging to go to a hospital or something like that. And the insurance that is just crazy. I watch a lot of John Oliver last week tonight
or something.
Exactly. And he does a lot of pieces about how corrupt the system in America is, and it's eye-opening. But what I think is interesting is that we in Denmark, we have a lot of successful companies. Also in the video game market, we have like IO Interactive, who does the Hitman stuff. We have Playdead with Limbo and Inside. We have Cocoon from last year is a Danish game. And a lot of other talented video game developers. And they have gotten the chance to live out their dream through government funding, through, through the school system that we have here. And I often think about how much talent, because I think Americans is extremely talented when it comes to the entertainment business.
Sure.
And it's crazy that not everyone have the same rights.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, though, I think what's important for people to understand is it's easy to kind of get kind of patriotic about it, whatever country you're in.
Yeah, of course.
But I think people are people, obviously Jaffe, idiot, but people are people, and the way you live and think is not always, but in large part a response to the world in which you live. And when you live in a world where there is a scarcity mindset of what most people consider basic human rights, like healthcare, like education, like food. I mean, the fact that we have millions of people in America going to bed every single night, including tons of children who don't have enough food. It's not like we can't make enough food. It's not like we don't throw enough food, or we don't throw food away in quantities that would be more than enough to feed them. But when you live in that kind of society, it is going to affect the way you see the world and the way you see your fellow men and the way you see other people from other countries. And that's any country. Same thing with you guys. Yeah. True. But that said, though, once Putin invades you guys, I'm sure you'll be calling, going, "Can we please get a little help, America?"
We are part of NATO, so I'm
right. No, we'll be there. Yeah, sure.
I'm not so worried about Putin anymore. I mean, he can't even like invade a country in his backyard. I mean, he doesn't have the mental capacity, or quite frankly, there's so much corruption in the military that they apparently cannot even do a ground invasion.
What's hard to know about that whole thing, though, is it because of him, or because he is being stifled because there are people. I mean,
the whole system is rotten.
Right. So if Putin died tomorrow or was assassinated tomorrow, would Russia suddenly go, "We're so sorry, let's pull out"?
No.
Or would it be, "Thank God we killed that fucker, let's fucking hard press with the nukes"? I don't know.
I think that's the scariest thing. That is, if Putin is assassinated, I think there's a worse man behind him ready to take his place.
Yeah, there's always a worse man.
So,
you can count on it.
We want to talk about video games.
Welcome to the political show that's off the rails. I came here for video games. Oh, I understand. That's why my stream is growing, but not growing big enough, because I can't help but get off topic. I can't.
So you tried to stop me before when I said I was honored to have you, but
nobody likes introductions. Can we talk about that for a minute? Nobody cares.
No, we can't talk about it because we need to talk about video games.
I did God of War. I did Drawn to Death. I started in 95. I started as a test. Nobody, if you care enough to be listening to this because it says David Jaffe, you already know that stuff. And if you don't, do you really care? No. Let's get to the meat, boys.
Let's get to the meat. We'll skip all of the personal David.
Because who gives a shit? If you really care, then ask me. But do you really want to know my backstory? It's like having Spider-Man.
It's all there on the internet.
What happened? Hey, radioactive spider. Tell me about that. Well, it's everywhere. Don't worry about it.
So I actually want to talk about a little thing in your background. But first, I just want to I want to come clean. So Nikolai, you can valid for this. So I have been starstruck like 3 times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I work in the movie business, and I meet a lot of famous people. And I've never been starstruck by an actor.
Wait a minute. Let's be clear. You work in the Danish movie business.
Yeah, yes. Mads Mikkelsen, do you know him? He's from Denmark. Lars Mikkelsen, the Thrawn guy, he's
but
from
you
Denmark.
don't work with Mads Mikkelsen.
No, I don't, okay?
I mean, it's like I was next to him when I was ordering my food. Okay. The biggest star you've worked for in the Danish cinema is probably...
Who is it?
The equivalent of America's public access people. So I'm just being a dick, you guys. I'm fucking around. I'm just fucking. People watching this who've never heard. Who is this asshole? You guys, listen to me, guys. I have raging, scorching ADD.
We knew what we were getting into.
Yeah, I took my Ritalin. I'm on a fucking adrenaline high because I just finished another show. It's gonna kick
in a moment, right?
And I just have to say, I'm really a nice guy. I'm very progressive. I'm very liberal. I know that these guys are actually in Orlando. I know they're not in but I'm just fucking hyper, and I get it. If you need to turn it off, I get it, man. I'm not insulted, and you don't need to feel bad, as you probably should. So let's focus, boys.
Yeah, let's focus.
So okay, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm not sleeping. I'm focusing.
Yeah, I was starstruck when I met Deej, who was the community manager from Bungie, from Destiny 2, and I was starstruck this summer when we were at Gamescom, and we got the Starfield presentation, and Phil Spencer and Todd Howard walked into the room. Mm-hmm. I was pretty starstruck there, but I'm also pretty starstruck now, David, because I have never played one of your games.
Well, play a game, that'll change. You won't be starstruck anymore. You'll be like, why did we book this guy?
But I watch a lot of your content. I think you are one of the most interesting content creators out there on YouTube. You have some of the most interesting opinions, and like me, you like to be a little provocative sometimes.
I don't like to be. I just am. I really don't try. I don't try. I don't. I mean, I'm not out there going, I'd like to be a provocateur. These are things I think, you know?
So when I researched you, I found out that, like you said, you have done God of War, you have done Twisted Metal and Drawn to Death, but I saw that you actually wanted to be in the movie industry.
Well, I thought I wanted to be in the movie industry. I started making movies when I was a kid. I was about 9. I saw a special on the TV about the making of Empire Strikes Back, and that planted the seed. And then I saw Raiders Lost Ark the next summer, and I was like, oh my fucking God, what a cool job to be a director, right? And so I started making movies around 11 years old, Super 8, all that shit, video. And then I went and I was like, okay, I'm going to be a director. And in Alabama, where I grew up, it wasn't like there were a lot of people laying claim to that. So all you had to do was say you wanted it, and people were like, you're going to be the next Spielberg. And I thought, okay. But I was terrible at it. My movies weren't good. I didn't really care about the craft of filmmaking. I didn't really even know what a director did. I just wanted the life of a director that was portrayed to me through the media. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a fucking fun life. But, my parents didn't know any better. My mom read all the tabloids and thought stars were the gods of Olympus. And we were all in, watched the Oscars like it was the fucking, Christmas mass. And so I went out to California, go to USC. I got into SC. Didn't get into their film school, but I made movies out there. I met Spielberg out there. That was the time I was starstruck. I made a fucking fool of myself. Barely remember it. Because that guy in my mind was Jesus. I mean, he was a god, and so I couldn't engage with him as a human. He was on my set. He's like, hey, what's this shot about? What's your movie about? And I'm like, I don't even remember what I said. I was just like, you're Jesus. And so, and eventually, my stuff just was never very good, even though I sold some stuff to the studios and whatnot. And I got a job at Sony because I had to pay the rent. And for a time there was a window where sort of I was plugged in to the zeitgeist of what the consumer wanted. And, we had a really nice, fun ride. But ultimately, I love the medium. I love games. I think it's just the most interesting potential for communication we've ever had. Whether you call them games or just interactivity, it's staggeringly ripe with potential. But I no longer want to work in that world. It's changed so much, and I feel like I've gotten what I needed out of it. And I'm having so much more fun now doing what I'm doing that, people, I'm doing some consulting work here and there, but are there any games that you're sad you didn't get to make? I'm not sad, but I had a game, and I'd still like to do this, but it's not because I want to make games anymore, because I really like the idea of creating an interactive experience based on this narrative, which is, I've always liked the idea, and again, I don't know if anybody would want to buy it. It would have to be super indie, but I've always liked the idea of, the idea of raising your kid with every, let me ramble for a brief moment. That's all you've been doing, Jaffe. Okay. I went to college with a guy named Todd Marinovich, who was pretty much raised in a bubble by his father, not literally, to be a football player, right? To go to USC, from the day that kid was like 6, it was like Tiger Woods, right? And he eventually kind of crashed out because of drugs, because the pressure, and it's not what he wanted to do. And he wanted to be an artist, blah, blah, blah. But I love that idea of raising your kid with sort of your own personal desires in mind. And the idea of raising a kid to be the president of the United States because you believe in all these conspiracy theories and you want your kid to get in at the highest level so he can, so it's almost like you raise your kid to be this sleeper agent, right? So I have this game about this guy who becomes president, and we don't really know at first that he was raised to do that. We just think he's a really charismatic guy. And it's really about sort of this insane conspiracy that he discovers that's happening literally under the White House. And it goes very deep. And I love the story, and I love that story being interactive. And, that's one of those things, if somebody came to me and said, hey, we'll give you $3 million and here's the team or whatever, I'd consider it. But I'm not looking to get back into it short of a dream project like that. But I'm not walking around sad. Like, here's what I would tell you. If I never got to make it and I died tomorrow, I wouldn't be like, oh no. I'd be like, all right.
Sounds kind of like a House of Cards, someone who's groomed,
sure,
working hard behind the scenes to become president at any cost.
Well, yeah, but it's more sci-fi X-Files than that. It doesn't really. Okay, it's not like it's trying to be a political drama. It's about. I don't know. I don't want to ruin it because I'll like it one day.
It sounds super interesting, and you have always. All your concepts have always been very interesting. Drawn to Death is, we just, Nikolai had never heard of the game.
I've never seen it, but I looked it up and I was like, what am I looking at? This is so striking. Like, it's just, And
it seems like, and I may be misreading this, but it seems like Drawn to Death was a little ahead of its time. Do you have the same feeling? Because it was this like online multiplayer game, and it had a very striking art style.
The art style is basically like pencil.
It's so drawn.
Cool. Well, I mean, really I don't know if it was ahead of its time mechanically, of course, but it was funny because it started as a game called Stick Figure Shootout, right? I just wanted, and they were stick figures, but once we started production on it, and I was researching on the internet, I found this artist. He's an artist now, but his name's Simon Green. And I was just, because the idea is about a kid in high school who's like doodles. You're playing his notebook doodles, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just started Googling that, and I saw these images of this art from high school that I'm like, this doesn't look like stick figures. They look like poorly trained, not artists, just, shit crazy drawings you do in your notebook in high school. And we reached out to this guy who had become a professional artist, and we said, we want to hire you. And so we actually totally changed the art style to be more like a literal what it would look like. And it was kind of a mistake, even though I love the look, because it was so intentionally unappealing, because not unappealing like it wasn't, but it was intentionally bad. In the sense that, like,
childish almost, right? In its drawing style, it's like what would a child draw? You want to draw a super soldier. He has spiky hair, and there's missiles coming out of his head and arms.
That's right.
Like, that's
right.
That's kind of the style.
And I think I assumed everybody would go, "Oh, that's cool. We know what you're doing, and we like what you're doing." And I think what ended up happening, also is very vulgar. I mean, the kid's like 16. He's 16. He's angsty. His stepdad's an asshole. All of the stuff in his life is in the notebook. So if you actually kind of piece together the narrative, all of the crazy characters are from his life. And it landed with a big thud, but the visual style I love. But I think looking back now, I was probably too precious with the need to convey that piece of narrative or that concept.
The meta story around it.
Well, no, basically. But the idea that this is literally his notebook. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Like the game opens with real video in a classroom. Yeah. And if you hit start, the camera looks down at his notebook and you literally dive inside the pages, right? I mean, we were all
super
in.
Cool. Yeah.
It is conceptually, and it might have made a great movie or a story-based game. But I think for a lot of people coming into what was essentially intentionally meant to be a free-to-play shooter, people were like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, right? It was kind of an arty-farty idea that presented itself more to an audience that wasn't really looking for arty-farty.
The concept is brilliant. Maybe it's not very well suited for a multiplayer shooter. Maybe it should have been a more linear story game where you have events in the boy's life, right? That inspires what goes on in the notebook, and you as a player, you have to piece together what the different things mean and what are the characters. I think that's a beautiful concept, really. But maybe it's not well suited. I appreciate
that, but what I will tell you is, I mean, that was so. I left Sony, started a company called Eat, Sleep, Play. We did a few games, creative conflicts there. We wanted different things. So I left and started this company, the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency. And Sony was the one that wanted to make this game. And they wanted to get into free to play and service-based games. This was back a while before now.
Now they are on another level. They want new stuff now.
This was like San Diego was leading the charge, and it was like this. There was a game called Guns Up. There was a game called Kill Strain. None of them did that well. Probably Guns Up did the best out of all of them. But anyway, and I said to the Sony folks at one point, I said, I want this to be a single player game as well. I said, I'm kind of feeling that more right now. Can we start with the single player game? And they're saying, yeah, but no, we greenlit. We want this multiplayer thing. And so I could have walked away from the deal, but I didn't have a lot of other offers that were as good as working with Sony, because Sony, rightly so, and they gave us the room to grow and build the company and make mistakes, and they're a great company to work with as developers. And could we have gotten a deal with 505? Yeah, maybe, but we would have been out of business probably in 14 months, and we never would have shipped, because I'm not speaking poorly of them. I'm just saying your average third-party publisher doesn't have the appetite for kind of like, let's fuck up for 6 months and figure out what the fuck we're doing. And Sony understands that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times there is value in that percolation period. So,
what was it like working for Sony? Can you get a little more into that? Like, how is it?
Well, I worked for them as an employee from like 1992 up until about 2011. And then I worked with them, meaning I had my own companies that I co-founded with people, and those companies I worked with Sony. So I've only ever really worked with Sony as publisher and as a member of Sony in my career. Then I worked with them for about 10 years or something. So what I will say is, and that's another reason I don't chomp at the bit to get back into video games, is there's actually way more in common with what I do today, which is my streams and videos, and what I did at Sony from PS1 to PS3 era than there is with making games when I made them and what it is like to work at Sony today. And that's not good or bad, but I don't think it would have appealed to me getting into it now, at least at the AAA level, because I had so much freedom, right, to do. I mean, I don't want to oversell it. It wasn't like, hey, Jaffe, come in and shit on a disc and we'll ship it. It wasn't like that. I had to sell, I had to get people to buy in and stuff. But, there was management in place and there was also a philosophy in place, and understandably so, the games didn't cost that much back then, where we could make things that we just thought were cool and commercial enough. And even if it wasn't a big hit, okay, we'd make our money back and know, let's move on from that, which is why in those early days of PlayStation and all the consoles, you had a lot more creativity. You had a lot more variety that you now see in the indie space, that you see in the AA space, but you don't really see as much of. You see a little bit. I think Alan Wake 2 is a good example of it, of creativity in the AAA space, although budget-wise, you could argue that's not really AAA, but what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? It comes across as AAA. Is what I would say.
Yeah. And maybe in production value and
right. I mean, like Control as well. I mean, I don't know if it's the cost of living or work where they are, where you guys are, but they're able to make things look a lot more AAA. But when you look at the budgets or hear about the budgets, you're like, how did they do that? Like, I think somebody said Control was $50 million. And you're like, really? $50 fucking million.
What was the budget on the first God of War game?
24.
Okay, 24. Wow.
That's also
right. And the first budget on the first Twisted Metal was $850,000.
Wow, crazy.
Right. So, but anyway, the point is though, is that the freedom that I got back then from my bosses and from the philosophy that kind of trickled throughout all the studios, it was like I could wake up and go, you know what? I saw this movie going to my boss. I want to explore doing a game about, the microverse or whatever. Okay, sure. Here's some money for a concept artist. Go fuck around for a couple weeks. Let's meet in 2 weeks, see what you got. And if it's good, we'll go to the next level. Now it's like the film business where it's like, you get a green light, unless you're talking about a small little indie movie, you get a green light on a movie because it's good for marketing. It's good for sales. It's good for international. It checks these boxes. There's a lot more oversight, and that's fine. There are people who love and thrive in that. I think Cory Barlog showed that he thrives in that with 2018's God of War, and I'm very interested to see what he does, because my understanding is he's going to be doing a new IP, and I'm assuming it's going to be at that budget. There are people who vibe in that world, but for me, it's the same now doing my show. I can wake up and go, I want to try a show that's just I want to talk mostly on this particular show about weird fucking video games. And I want to be really high when I do it. Okay. Let's try that. And I started that show recently, and, I don't know if I'm going to keep it going, but it's that same sense of like creative exploration that I don't find at Sony or any of the big companies these days out of necessity, because they're expensive.
Do you
this
think
summer, this summer we talked to the developers from Lords of the Fallen. With the game director and the art director from there, and they were both they worked at Ubisoft, and they did not talk kindly about their time at Ubisoft, because they described it almost like being on a factory. There was no passion. It was just, there was this big IP, and it just had to ship on time and had to be very, very big. So there were no personal stuff in the game. It was all like just checkboxes, like the games feel to play, right? And that's almost what you're describing at Sony right now, right?
Well, okay. To be fair, though, I mean, I can't speak to Ubisoft. That, you know, Sony does treat its developers really well, at least as far as I remember, certainly, but and understand now. And, you know, I think they still put a premium on, you know, games having a personal or an interesting vision, whether it's from one person or 5 people on the team. Like if you mentioned Returnal. Now, Returnal didn't cost a lot of money to make, but boy, that's a great fucking game. It didn't sell that much. They're not doing a sequel. The creative director left. But I mean, you know, Sony's not like, oh, make another sequel every year. It's another sequel. They're getting there, or a remaster. But what I will say though is, I mean, when you look at AAA though, to various degrees, what you described happening at Ubisoft is what happens everywhere, you know, and there are people that are like, if you're a texture modeler and you don't aspire to tell your own stories, and you're like, I'm a texture modeler by day, and at night I have a studio in my home and I work on paintings and I'm happy as a pig in shit, and I get great benefits and great salary. I get it. I get why that would be an attractive career for you, because you get paid great. And you know, I was playing Spider-Man 2 the other day, and I was looking at, it was the scene where Mary Jane's sneaking around and doing the stealth stuff, and she goes by this car, and it had a lot of rust and stuff on it. And I'm like, some poor some bitch, that's probably all they did on this game, was all the rust and on wheels and cars and you know, I don't fucking know if that's true, but I mean, that's the level of specialization that's required. And for me, I look at it and I just go, man, I'll tell you what, if I were to get into games today, even if I didn't know what I know now, but I knew what that was, I would say, no, thank you. I would be an indie developer.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking, why don't you just do indie games?
Well, because I don't like making games anymore.
Okay. Was that Drawn to Death that killed that passion?
No, I enjoyed Drawn to Death. I think honestly here's honestly what it was. So God of War I don't think I'm a game maker. True and through, like a Ken Levine. Like I love games. I love how they're put together. I love systems. I love mechanics. But the idea of sitting at a desk all day and, you know, figuring that shit out was some of the most boring stuff I ever had to endure making games. And I drove the team miserable because, you know, I have ADD. I mean, this interview is probably not easy for you guys. Imagine working with me for 5 years on something and I'm the one in control. I mean, I get it. You know, but I just, you know, the one thing I remember on God of War, we were, you know, in my mind, I was done with the work because I'm like, I want Kratos to be able to climb. And I want it to be like this 2D game that was kind of inspired by Flashback called Heart of Darkness. Not a lot of people play, but it was a PS1 game. And I want him to have combat, excuse me. And I want him to be able to jump from wall to wall or whatever. I'm done. Right? That was my contribution.
Yeah.
But to sit in the meet, and then once it was done, I would tune it. That was my contribution, right? And I would design the levels with the level designers about what happens on this wall. But sitting in the meetings where it was like the programmers and the artists talking about how to make that work, oh my God.
That's all the boring shit that you have to sit
If I had one of those suicide pods you guys have legal in Sweden there.
What are you talking about?
What's the country over there that has the pod you can get in and pass away?
What?
It's like
a pod? What the fuck?
You haven't seen the suicide pods? It's either in Sweden. It's one of the countries that has trolls. What's the country that has the trolls?
I think the debate about assisted what's it called assisting death or whatever has come up recently. But as far as I know, it's not something that we do. It's not legal.
We had an interesting story here in Denmark that.
Hang on, I'm going to help you out. You guys need to know Switzerland. Are you guys in Switzerland?
Death pods.
We had this interesting story about this old couple. Did you hear about this, Nikolai? This old couple where so the woman had Parkinson's disease, and they wanted to die together. But this, but the state didn't want to allow it in Denmark. No. And then the husband killed his wife out of passion. of course.
Oh, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy.
He was just released, right?
He was just released from prison, yeah.
Holy shit. Why didn't he kill himself? Weren't they supposed to die together?
Yeah, maybe he chickened out. I don't know.
My ex-wife, we watched my ex-mother-in-law die of dementia, and it was a terrible thing because you forget how to eat, you just lie in your bed, but they keep you alive because you can't murder things because Jesus. What? I don't fucking know. But and she said to me, she says, "Look, man, if I get dementia, I want you to kill me. If it's legal in California under certain circumstances, like if you have cancer and it's not curable and you jump through the hoops, you can take a shot and die. But it's not as easy like in Switzerland where literally there is a pod. You can look it up. It's kind of cool. It's a pod that you get in. The oxygen kind of goes away, but it's a very peaceful death. You hear music. You can put it wherever you want. So you can like die by the ocean or whatever. And you're done. And so I told her though, I said, yes, I will absolutely do that. In a heartbeat. I'm not going to let people I love suffer because some bullshit Puritan religious text from the fucking Iron Age. No, thank you. It's not happening.
It's a 3D printed sarcopod, it's called, that you can use to do assisted suicide. Holy shit, that's dark.
It's not dark. It's beautiful.
Depending on how you look at it. I mean,
yeah.
We handle death really. I mean, again, death is very sad. I'm not saying it's not, although, we can get into a big philosophy about that. But I mean, hell, the American government came out yesterday and they didn't confirm, if you were watching the show earlier, my show, they didn't confirm intradimensional beings. But the fact that the American government, Congress, not some fringe Alex Jones motherfucker, the fact that they came out, Democrat and Republican, and not only said that this David Grush guy, who is the UFO whistleblower, is valid and legit. But then they said, well, let's be clear. This is what one of the Congress people said. Grush never said aliens. He never said extraterrestrials. He said intradimensional beings. And then they said what Grush said is valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm here. What's up? Don't come on.
This for me, I'm bleeding.
You're bleeding?
Yeah, just a little bit.
What? No, what's happening?
This is what she says to me. This is what my kid comes in and says to me. She says, "Dad, I'm bleeding. Can you open this?" I'm like, "Jesus, you're bleeding." Okay. She says, "Just a little bit," because I've been trying to open this for 10 minutes. I said, "Oh,
what is it?
It's butter." There's a tab.
Butter?
You didn't see the tab. I love you with all my heart. I really do. Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. There are some really, really interesting debates going on.
What just happened? Why is she bleeding?
Yeah, that's the mystery.
She cut her finger because she's trying to open the butter, but she didn't know there was a tab. Like there's a butter tub of butter. And she wanted to open the lid, but she didn't see that there was a tab. And without using the tab, you can't get the fucking thing open. So she was hurting herself because she just assumed it was stuck. And that's I'm just teasing her, but I mean, it's
I'm glad she's okay.
The whole bucket is yellow, so if you miss the tab, I would forgive you because it all blends together.
We don't have those in Denmark.
So I know that we got to go for a break in just a minute, but David,
tell weed time, baby.
Tell the listeners we seriously have to do a break because Jaffe has to order dope online, I guess.
Yes, but it's because we're doing pot and popcorn for members tonight for my stream. So we're watching, I'm not even fucking with you guys. We're watching a movie called Zombie Ass, The Toilet of the Dead.
I saw the trailer. Yes. I saw the trailer. It's so hilarious.
What the fuck is that, right? And then we're going to watch Peter Jackson's Brain Dead.
Yeah.
And I like to watch those when I'm potted up really good because... And I'll tell you something, I've never been a big pot guy. I'm not like Kevin Smith used to be. It's not like I use it all the time. I smoke pot maybe once every 6 weeks, right? But when I do it, I smoke a shit ton because I like to have a shift in perspective and consciousness, and it's very spiritual, as I'm watching Zombie Ass, But I love that, and yes, I have to order it because they deliver it now like pizza in LA, in California. It's the best. Yeah. And I mean, it's legal here. I know it's legal where you guys are, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
I think weed is, yes.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. What's your opinion about? Do you think weed stifles your creativity, or do you think it enhances it? What's your?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the person. I mean, I think it depends on what you're doing. I think if you look, it absolutely will enhance your ability to maybe let go and free associate and stream of consciousness create. And maybe when you get lucid again, you can find the gems and mine those gems. But for me, that's never been the appeal, and that's never really been the, I mean, I certainly have weird thoughts, but it's not like I wake up and go, I want to put that, it's not like I can smoke some pot and go, I know how to fix this mechanic. I'm more like, I see these doors, and I know it sounds like I'm talking about LSD, which I've never done, but I did talk to a doctor and I said, it's weird that I hallucinate sometimes on pot because people say you don't hallucinate on pot. He says, well, if you take as much as you do and you don't have a high tolerance, because I don't take it that often, he's like, it can have hallucinogenic properties. And the first time I took it, it was a wonderful experience. I took it at a God of War party before we had shipped the game, and we were, and I'd never done pot before. And Chan Park, one of our great designers, I think he's at Technicolor now, he made a bong out of a Diet Coke bottle, like a big 2-liter bottle. And he says, well, here, come take a hit of this. And I'm like, okay, I want to try some pot. And it didn't, I was like, it's not working. He's take another. It's not working. Yeah. Take another. Right. So I did like 5 massive hits from this.
You got to give it time,
I didn't know this, and I guess he knew it, but he's like, I'm going to fuck with this motherfucker. I want to and so I'm walking back to the living room, and it hits me like a fucking freight train. And I start bowing to the television because I'm seeing light emanating from inside.
I wish I would have been there.
And people said, what are you doing? And I said, it's divine. Can't you see the divinity in this TV? And then I saw this little flying cherub that was flying around, and it went outside. And I went outside and I looked up and I saw, like Monsters, Inc., like infinite doors of multicolors stretching to the heavens. I remember at that moment, I said to myself, I have to be careful, because not because I want to escape my reality, but because there is a whole world here, or multi-worlds here, whether it's literal or whether it's just philosophical and psychological, that I would lose my shit like Timothy Leary in exploring. I would become one of those sort of internauts. I would want to, what is going on in the brain, right? So I'm like, you got to be careful, Jaffe, because you could easily
end up in limbo.
Well, you could end up a fucking drug addict, and I don't want to do that. And, the other time I was really high, I was in my backyard and I looked up at the sky, and I'm a total agnostic. I'm not atheist, but I'm atheist when it comes to every religion that's ever been proposed. I don't believe in any religion that's out there, but I'm agnostic, meaning I don't know what the fuck's going on. But I looked up in the sky and I heard this voice, and I thought it was God. And I said to the voice, I said, oh, well,
go fuck yourself.
No. I said, well, there you are. Why are you always hiding from us? And the voice came back and said, it's not me who's hiding. It's you guys are hiding from me. And then it just poof, went away. And then I started having chronological hallucinations where time shifted.
Holy shit.
No, that's common. That's not a, have you ever done,
No, I never,
sure, it happens all the time. No.
Have you ever been stoned?
Nope. One time, sorry. I got sleepy, but yeah, I'm really.
Is this a Christian podcast? It's like a religious.
No. Yes, I'm not good at very much, but I am very good at writing, and I'm very good at just, being creative. And I'm so afraid that if I'm doing drugs, it will fuck up my brain.
It might. I mean, if you did, pot probably won't. But what I will tell you about movies and drugs, though, and
I've seen
examples.
I've known people though who have lost their parents. Like basically, their parents were smoking so much weed that they were just no one was home. You could tell. I mean, I once went home to one of my friends, his house, and we came in.
What you just said was, I've known people whose parents were smoking so much weed, no one was home.
Yeah, no, okay. Not in the living room.
I don't have any idea what you're saying.
They were. I'm about to explain. So they were just not. You couldn't connect with them. It felt like there was no one home when you were talking to them.
I mean, yeah. If you're escaping reality with it all the time, it's a nightmare. Don't ever. I mean, I'm not advocating that at all.
Yeah.
I think our brains are wired. We've evolved to be this way because this is how we function in this society, in this world, in this species, whatever. But I think those other realms are absolutely worth exploring. And investigating, but I think you have to do it responsibly, and I think you have to do it from the right place. I think to do it to escape, I have a real problem with that because life is hard, and there are wonderful vices, but let's put it this way: I'd rather you smoke weed than drink alcohol all the time.
Yeah, and people drink a lot of alcohol to escape the reality, right? And
that's true. Yeah. But what I wanted to say though about movies is, I will say one of the benefits of pot. Is since I started using it, again, not frequently, but horror movies have actually become scary in horror games. And I love horror. It's my favorite genre, but I've never been afraid in a video game, and I have never been afraid in a movie since I was like 12.
No.
Right. Wow.
Same.
You know,
I don't have that problem. So
yeah, no. So, but now with pot, even if I'm not high, my susceptibility to respond to horror on screen is awesome, because now I kind of get to enjoy it, not just at an intellectual level, but at a visceral level. And that is what it's brought to me. But, you know, what's the highest movie you've made? What's the highest gross?
So I've done TV shows. I'm doing my first movie in this summer.
Okay, what's the most successful TV show, like in terms of ratings?
Oh yeah, in ratings.
Ratings. Don't talk about ratings.
Don't talk about that.
Let's not.
So why are you worried? Maybe there's only up to go.
Yeah, you can only go up from here.
I'm just saying, what are you protecting, pal?
Yeah,
no. So comedy has always been hard at getting good ratings, right? And in Denmark, it's no exception. So,
what does Denmark find funny? Is there like a cultural?
Not Morten Urup stuff.
What do we find?
Not
funny?
more.
Definitely let your stuff, but what would it be? I don't know.
Like in America, like my sensibility is not traditional in America. Like I loved The State. I love Monty Python. Sorry.
Have you seen that movie called Riders of Justice? That's a Danish movie. No. Okay. So that's a movie that a lot of people find funny. Yeah. So yeah. But I can say that... We talked
about Community. I love Community.
Yeah.
And things need to be a little bit... I don't think they need to feel smart, but I think you have to have sort of an inner monologue with yourself in order to get and appreciate that kind of humor. Whereas a lot of people, I think, it doesn't mean they're simple, but it just means they're busy with other things. That kind of more broad humor has never really been... I like more absurdist shit and surreal shit.
That's my stuff. So there's a lot of people who watch my stuff, but I don't get good ratings.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's great though. I mean, some of the best, like I said, there's a show in America called The State that never took off. It was on MTV. Yeah. And some of the people on it have gone on to semi-decent sized careers. But I mean, they would do it was like, there was this one guy who there was a skit. It was like SNL, Saturday Night Live skit comedy, but it was fucking bizarre. And there was one guy who he was just obsessed with bacon. That was the skit. And he made a dress out of bacon, and he was dedicating and devoting himself to this love to bacon. I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? And then there was this one skit where this guy is waiting by his mailbox to confront the mailman, because the mailman has stopped delivering the mail, and he keeps every day putting tacos in the guy's mailbox. And finally he confronts me, says, dude, I need my mail. And the guy's like, yeah, I know, but I don't have a passion for delivering the mail. I have a passion for delivering tacos. And so he's just putting tacos in. It's so dumb, but I couldn't. It's, people are like, Jesus Christ, Jaffe, if you ever want to see what a polite laugh looks like, watch this segment of the podcast, because these guys, you can do a lot of stuff, Jaffe. You can't tell a joke. Don't tell a joke.
David, I think we should go for a break. But first, before you do,
I got 10 minutes.
You got 10 minutes?
Okay. Alarm goes off.
Okay, so I want to ask you quickly.
Yeah.
What is your 3 favorite movies you've seen?
Well, that's. I mean, I will give you an answer, but I will preface all of it by favorite has become so difficult because
in terms
of games.
Let me rephrase the question.
Okay.
Yeah. So what 3 movies have inspired you?
Okay. Right. That's a great way to put it, because absolutely when people ask, Jaffe, what are your favorite games? It depends on favorite related to what? Nostalgia? Sure. So the movies that have inspired me, obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark. If it wasn't for Raiders, I would not have realized or considered, or at least when I did, that some kind of career in entertaining people and being in movies or games or whatever was for me. So Raiders, absolutely. Short of that, I mean, I would say, now people make fun of it a lot, but American Beauty, when it came out at the time,
that was good.
I was kind of getting into or learning about not so much Buddhism, but sort of non-secular Buddhism and sort of Eastern philosophy and being present in the moment and starting to meditate more. And that movie hit at the right time for me, where it really kind of deconstructed all the bullshit of America and consumerism and capitalism, and really got to the essence of why we're happy and why we're not happy and why we say we're happy, but it's just a front. So I would say that, and then maybe a more recent movie that was inspiring, probably, I mean, I think Waiting for Guffman from Christopher Guest is because I think comedy for me, I mean, I love horror as my favorite, but I think comedy is just, life is mean and cruel and hard. It's good. I love it. I'm grateful for it. I beats the alternative. But the older I get, the more I appreciate the people who put things out into the world that allow us either to escape or to kind of at least put things in perspective. Because everybody's going through it. Everybody's suffering and everybody's struggling with something. And so to watch a movie like Waiting for Guffman, which is just batshit hilariously stupid, is a joy. And then, to be honest with you, though, what's been really interesting to me is, like I said, me and the family, we watch TV a lot. Like we find shows we like, but when the shows are over, inevitably we'll go to Instagram or TikTok and we'll just start sharing the shorts that we like. Yeah. And, I get why today's generation is as excited about watching shorts and YouTube as movies, because there's some real fucking funny shit on there that you wouldn't get past the studio system. You wouldn't get funding for, but there's some crazy shit on there that's funny. So, but there, I would say inspiring movies, Raiders, American Beauty, and Waiting for Guffman, but that's top of mind.
So I gotta ask, so when we get back from the break, I want to talk more about video games. I want to talk about PlayStation. I want to talk about the current state of the video game industry. That's
and where it's going.
That's what we talk a lot about here on our show and on your channel as well. So I want to ask you, what is your favorite console of this generation? And before you answer, let me just tell you a little about me and Nikolai's background. In Denmark, most people play PlayStation. And I think the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, some of my favorite consoles. But when it came for the current generation, we actually made a switch. We chose Xbox Series X because of Game Pass, because we want to do this podcast, and Game Pass allowed us at the start to review games, talk about games, because we just got them. Nikolai was studying at the time, so he didn't have the money to buy a new game every month. And Game Pass allowed that for us. And now it's another situation. We get codes all the time, but I think Xbox for us right now is the best console, but it's very hard to sell here in Denmark. There's not a lot of people.
It's very hard to sell everywhere. Yeah. No one's buying it.
I know. But what is your favorite console? Because I see you have a green shirt on.
Well, because I'm a goddamn grown ass man. So when I wear a green shirt, it's because it's what was clean and I like the color green. I don't support a fucking $1 trillion company like a goddamn sports team. And frankly, and I'm privileged because I have everything, right? Yeah. So I have a MetaQuest, or MetaQuest 2. I have the PS5, I have an iPhone, I have an Xbox X, I have a Switch, and I have a PC. I am very loyal to games, but I don't give a fuck about where I play them. That's a ridiculous, stupid fucking thing that, at least in America, this console war thing is just so, because at first when you're like, oh, these must be 12-year-olds. And then you're like, these are grown ass motherfucking men.
Yeah.
These are people
primarily our listeners.
Like, are you out of your fucking mind? And again, there's part of it that if it's done in fun,
yeah. Exactly.
I get that. That's different. But there are people who are like serious about this. But anyway, every console excels at something right now, which is cool. I don't think you're going to get those great cinematic first party games that Sony makes better than anyone right now.
No.
Unless you have a PS5 or you wait a little bit and play it on PC. Mm-hmm. I think as consoles go, if you exclude PC, though, I would say Xbox X has been my favorite this generation. I don't think any of their first-party games so far are at a production value level as good as Sony's games. Not
That's
even,
fair.
yeah. But I think the variety they offer in their first-party, like even people say, well, PlayStation has Gran Turismo. It's like they do, but they don't have Forza Horizon, right? Like Forza Horizon is my cup of tea because it's arcade racing.
Amazing.
Although I will say the new Crew Motorsport or Motorfest is better than Forza Horizon, but whatever.
Really? I mean, to me, it looks like it's a complete, like, just riding off.
Yeah. I'm not saying it isn't, but it does it better, I think.
Like the marketing, everything, it's just a straight.
Yeah. But it's great. It's great. But anyway, so the variety that Xbox first party offers, the variety that you get every week for the most part on Game Pass. And and again, I have PS Plus Premium and it's a good service, really good service. Like I can't imagine, we didn't have a lot of money coming up, and when we got to buy a video game, it was, it was a big deal. It wasn't like we got like one a year, but it wasn't like every day we saw something we wanted, we got it. And, to imagine being a kid today and it's like, here's a PlayStation and here's PS Plus Premium. You're set for years, even if you never buy a game, right? Yeah. So I'm not taking the piss, but what I like about Xbox Game Pass over Premium is that there's a frequency of new games, and often day one that you don't get that. You get it sometimes, but not that often on PS Plus. So it's the first party variety. It's the fact that it's day one Game Pass. It's the fact that the third party's day one Game Pass. Yeah. They've also got a lot of fucking studios that I like. I love Doom Eternal, so I'm excited to see what those guys do. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, as I've mentioned. Yeah, I'm excited for this Thursday when we get to see Indy for the first time. There's just more to play, and I have to say, culturally, I like. I was watching, and again, I don't buy games or play games based on who the CEO is. I don't give a fuck if Jim Ryan was Ebenezer Scrooge. It doesn't affect my moment to moment gameplay, at least directly. But what I will say though is it's not there's a guy I know at Sony, a guy named Scott Rohde, who runs the American PlayStation arm, and that motherfucker, along with Shuhei, are two of the hardest core gamers I've met, beyond me. They play everything. But you don't really have that at the very tippy top, as far as I know. I don't hear Herman Holst or certainly Jim Ryan.
No, it doesn't look like it,
Right. But when I hear Phil Spencer talk and I hear and I see what he's playing on, people tweet out his gamer tag and what he was playing on New Year's Eve, or I was watching an interview he did at maybe Gamescom in Germany, where he was being interviewed and he was talking about Baldur's Gate 3 coming to Xbox. And then he just proceeded to riff on Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and the expansion pack of Baldur's Gate. Yeah. And I'm like, if you ask Jim Ryan, and again, it doesn't mean The Last of Us 2 remastered isn't going to be good because Jim Ryan didn't play Baldur's Gate. No. But there is kind of a sort of
that's your alarm.
something in the DNA and the culture, I think, when you have a company that is heavily influenced, if not run by someone who genuinely loves what they're making and loves the medium. And I think that comes through with Xbox.
Yeah, I love that. I think it comes through, like previously we talked about creative freedom within these, like within PlayStation, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like PlayStation has got, to me at least, a little bit more risk averse. They put their money into these big AAA projects. Whereas Xbox, you see all of these small passion projects coming up, right? And I think the variety that you see on Xbox is just, you said it yourself, it's far superior to what you have on PlayStation, where PlayStation focuses on more of these big budget AAA super high production value games, where you know what you're getting, right?
And also they're doing a lot of new IP at Xbox. You can say what you want about Starfield. I love the game. I know you do as well, Jaffe.
I love it.
I loved it.
But that's a new IP. Avowed new IP. Indiana Jones, a new IP in gaming.
Clockwork Revolution.
Clockwork. That's more interesting to me than, like,
I mean, even
Spider-Man
the stuff that's
3.
failed, Redfall, new IP, would have been a great IP if it would have been a great game. I mean, I love the world of Redfall. I still am disappointed because I love that Stephen King small main town vampire, and it looks good as that kind of world. I just didn't think it was a great game, but whatever. But I mean, even their failures are still interesting. Yeah. And it is more akin to old school PS1, PS2, PS3, where they were taking more chances. But again, to Sony's credit, though, I mean, and I'm sure there are people who watch your show who love Sony and take this shit real serious.
Many people.
Which they shouldn't, but they do. And they're probably going, it's still, fuck you. You can't even fucking find a PS5. We're number one. And it's like, yes, you're right. You're number one for now. But the thing is, they're really in an interesting conundrum. I don't think anybody, when Jim Ryan came out and said, hey, we're doing service games as well as these cinematic games, was like, that's a bad idea. Everybody thought, everybody understands the economics of it, which is they've built their bread and butter foundation on really expensive production value games.
Yes.
And I don't even know how much talent they've curated. I think a lot. Eric Williams, who directed Ragnarok, who I did not love that game because the pacing I thought was bad, but the combat was great. That motherfucker's a genius when it comes to moment-to-moment gameplay. That's a guy that shouldn't be direct, in my opinion. Give him like his own Hi-Fi Rush. He'd knock it out of the park, right? Maybe they have enough people like that they could pivot, but more and more they just want to, they know how to make the money off the big ticket shit. But those are taking longer and they're costing more and you have to take less risks.
Yeah, and people don't seem to realize
remasters and redos. And I don't fault them for that, but I do think they are really, unless I'm sure there's stuff we don't know about, they really need to get on the ball with pivoting.
People don't seem to realize that there's this delayed effect on video game development.
Yep.
Because it's true, PlayStation is number one right now. That's right, that's true. But how does the next couple of years look like PlayStation? I think they look a little scary. If I were a PlayStation consumer, I would be scared because Xbox, you can say what you want. No.
Oh my God.
Concerned.
But I'd be like, did I back the wrong horse? I mean, am I getting enough games? I mean, again, you're getting all the third-party shit. It's not like you're going to have nothing to play, but it's not as exciting as an ecosystem if you're into anything other than the big, once or twice a year, maybe a big first party. And it's even becoming not even once a year at times. So this year, what do they got? I mean, they've got that Ronin game, which isn't really first party, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Arrowhead here in early February, actually.
They got what coming?
Helldivers 2. I'm in the same boat.
I mean, not because I think it's bad. I understand people who loved Helldivers. I think it looks good. It looks fun for what it is.
Yes.
And again, we're talking variety and whatever, but you're charging $40 for it.
Yeah.
At least in America. And then it doesn't come with like a pass to let your friends play for a night or a week. So you've got to find 3 other people or at least one other person that wants to drop $40 on it. It's like, motherfucker, put that on PS Plus Premium. Somebody in my chat was like, that should be you should be able to sell it. But if you sub to PS Plus Premium, either you get it and you get like 10 passes for your friends or it's free for a week or whatever. But It's just weird, man. I don't think that game. I think the cost is too high on that, but it looks good. It looks fun.
Yeah, but that's not the kind of game that the average PlayStation consumer buy in on. They buy in on to they want to a Spider-Man 3, they want a The Last of Us Part 3 and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's coming a remaster. I'm playing it right now. It's great, but it's not a new game, right? And to be fair, it looks a lot. I'm playing the PS5 version, of course. It looks almost identical to the PS4 version because you know what? The PS4 version was pretty. Interesting.
But I would say to answer your question, Xbox. I think if I had to choose amongst everything I have, it would be PC. And I get that PC is the most expensive. Nobody can afford one. But if you love the medium, it's one of those things. If you really either want to work in the medium, well, if you want to work in the medium, you have to. But if you just love the art form, whether it's the big budget or the tiny weird fucking indie shit you find on itch.io, the PC, if you can't afford it, is what you should be saving for, or try to rent one at least every now and then so you can experience it. Because when I see people online talk about, oh, there's no variety in games anymore, I'm like, dude, what you really want to say is there's no variety in the expensive console games. And you're right, not entirely. Like Death Stranding's a breath of fresh air, even though I thought it was too slow for my brain. I don't mean that like I'm smart, but like I have ADD, it was too slow. But for the most part, though, there's not a lot of variety and originality at that scope. But on PC, man, it is a gamer's delight, because even this idea of backwards compatibility, it doesn't exist. It just works. You go to Steam and you get, I want to play, a game from, I played Dead Space 2. I just bought it on EA Origins or whatever. I bought the fucking thing for like $8.
The thing you have to worry about instead is forward compatibility, because your setup might not be able to support
but it depends where you live. I don't know what the state of broadband and streaming and server farms are in where you guys are.
It's looking good,
Well, okay, so if you look at like GeoForge now, which I have never subscribed to because I just was like, my PC's fine, but now I'm seeing people play top-end Cyberpunk 2077 streaming, and my streaming is good, my broadband is good, and I live close to a server farm. I have no problem playing a full game streaming, and I'm like, oh my God. So they just announced at CES they're going to be doing something called day passes. So right now, the only way to get into GeoForce now, at least in America, is $100 every 6 months. And I didn't want to do that because even though it does hook to Game Pass, which is nice. So if you're sub to Game Pass, all your Game Pass games, even if you don't own them, will work on GeoForce. But the day pass, I want to try first, and then I'll jump to the 100. But so my point is that even that, though, you have the options for that. You have the options for all the games in between. You have the options for all the Xbox games. Now, you're missing out Nintendo, which is some of the best gameplay in the world, and you're missing out the production value of Sony immediately. But we know that that's, getting quicker and quicker to come to PC. So if I were in the market for anything and I could only get one and I wasn't tied to a console, I mean, PC's absolutely the way to go. And it shouldn't, people are like, but PC's complicated. It's not anymore. But I know what they're talking about. Back in the day, you would buy a game at Best Buy and it's like, I got to get these drivers and this doesn't work, and fuck, why? I mean, go to customer service, does that exist still?
It does to some extent, I think.
But most things you buy on Steam, like 98% of Steam or itch.io shit, it just works. I'm not saying there aren't cases, but do you guys have a different experience with it? Or
I'm really not a PC player, to be honest.
My experience, I don't play a lot of PC, but I have bought a mid-range PC and started playing a lot of games on there. But my experience is, I think people just make it really hard for themselves with PC, to be honest. I think when I have a good experience, and when things work with my PC, I don't touch anything. And I don't spend hours trying to optimize my settings. I don't play around with different drivers. If there's a driver that works, I try to keep it. But
I think if you're in the mindset of messing with drivers, you're okay if the game comes out and it's kind of working, but you've messed with some settings and you want to really tweak it. You're already in that headspace. But if you're just a guy like you and me that want to play games, You don't have to fuck with it at all.
No. And people they want to optimize, and they get crazy about trying to squeeze out just 5 FPS more, and they end up spending more time optimizing their setup and uninstalling and installing shit, and coming up with all like weird kind of theories about why stuff's not working optimally for them. I don't get into that kind of stuff. I mean, it could be that I'm just lucky,
but you would agree that's not the normal experience. Like there is a hobbyist that loves that, but if people are walking around thinking still, which they are, that's the PC gaming experience, it's too much trouble. It really isn't. You go to Steam, I don't think it has to be. You download it and it works 95% of the time.
I agree. It doesn't have to be.
David, I'm so afraid that you're not buying your weed.
I need my dope.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
let me go.
I'm
going to hang up. Send me another link, or will this link work?
No, this link will work as well.
Okay, I'll be back in 15 minutes.
Great. I'll see you there.
All right. See you guys.
Yeah, everybody, and we're back again with the one and only David Jaffe. Did you order some weed?
I did. I got these little things. They're all-in-ones because I don't like having to roll it and all that thing.
Oh, you can get them. Yes. Oh.
Well, they're disposable, so it's kind of amount of weed you throw it away.
Okay.
Oh. And they're called Banana Runts, is what it's called, from Gelato.
Okay.
And they're one of the few weed companies that makes pot that actually, when it's on the box, it says, hey, they have one called like French toast. Kind of tastes like French toast. Kind of cool.
Really?
Yeah.
How's the smell then? You still smoke it, right?
Well, it's vape though, because I hate this.
Okay.
I hate the smell of weed. I can't stand it. So, I mean, you can get that, but no, these are disposable vapes, and they're flavored.
Nice.
And it's good.
Do you get into edibles also, or is that not your thing?
So
as we come back from the break, I want to let you know Camino edible marijuana.
There we go.
Is available now in all your favorite grocery stores. So it'll also, if you get straight A's in middle school, obviously your school will give you a free Camino edible pack. So get on in there, kids, and study hard.
I made a promise to myself in the break. I made a promise that we would stay on topic and talk about video games.
No. All right, well, good luck, bitch.
That's what I'm thinking. Good luck with that.
So, David, I want to talk about because
now you've jinxed it. You should have never said that. Now I'm like, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
So like a toddler.
If I didn't talk about God of War, our audience would kill us. So let's talk a bit about God of War. But what I think is interesting is when you have created something. Yeah, I'll just now David is, what's going on?
I just wanted to change up.
Change it up, yeah.
Great.
I want to cocoon up as we begin to talk about this topic.
Okay. You changed it so hard.
I fucked up.
You ruined it.
So it's like, dude, now you really look homeless. What are you doing? Although you guys don't know what homelessness is, do you?
It's a foreign concept that we don't.
It must be nice. Must be nice, man.
We do have homeless people.
Nikolai, you have to be on my side on this, right? Well, stay on top.
Dude, you're the one who ruined it. I mean, it's not happening. It's not happening.
So
just don't respond. It's like the bully in school. If you just ignore him, it'll go away. But if you keep responding to my bullshit, what am I going to do? Not keep doing it, you starstruck idiot?
Okay.
That man's so mean. Why are you watching that podcast? He's so mean, Billy. He's just doing a bit, Mom.
So
he wants to get cast in this guy's next movie. That gets really good ratings.
Creative. I know that when you have created something, you have a strong ownership about it. And I've always wondered how I would react if I created something and somebody else should interpret it. So how have it been for you to see somebody else do God of War?
Oh, I don't care. I don't
really.
I don't care. No, but again, this goes back to, I think a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people, when they hear me talk about God of War, I get so many people who, are very protective, understandably, of the new Gods of War, which I loved the 2018 God of War. The Ragnarok I felt was not great at some things. It was amazing.
I hated the ending. The ending was
I couldn't stick around with the ending.
Oh,
I thought the pacing was terrible. But I loved the combat. I thought there were some brilliant puzzles, amazing graphics, great. The sound in that game was amazing. The music, the performances. There's nothing about the game that is a bad thing. I just found the pacing and sort of the tone to be laborious for me.
Okay.
But I played a little bit of Valhalla recently, and I kind of like that snappy tone that feels like it's kind of getting a little bit back to its roots. I don't know if those two guys who directed that will be doing the next God of War. I'm not sure if that was like a practice run or what. But anyway, no, I don't care. I mean, I feel more of akin to Twisted Metal than God of War. And I would say that when the series, I had a lot of faith in the guys making the show, Twisted Metal, because they also worked on Zombieland and Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
And I love both of those shows, or movies and show. But when they showed the trailers, I was like, I don't know, man. But I mean, whatever, it's fine. But it turned out to be great. I really liked the Peacock show.
We haven't seen it yet. We're going to review
good.
it.
And they just got a second season where they're going to bring in Axel and everything. It's going to be great.
Are you? I think I heard it on Sacred Symbols. Is it true that you're having a cameo in?
Well, they asked me to cameo in the first one, and it was kind of during COVID, and I don't like leaving the house. I'm not agoraphobic. I just have everything I need here, so I'm good. But so flying is not my favorite thing, not because I'm scared, it's just boring. And so in COVID, so I was like, I'm good, because it was in New Orleans. It wasn't, but in the second season, if they ask me, I'll probably do it. Depends what it is. Like the first season, it's like, I'm not going to fly in COVID all the way to New Orleans to be a corpse in a freezer. Not that I think I'm some kind of actor, but doesn't mean much to me. You want to give me a stupid throwaway line and put me in post-apocalyptic garb? I might fly to New Orleans for that. But they're good people. I've always gotten along with them. I don't talk to them all that much. I'm not involved in it other than a few meetings here and there. But anyway, though, Sony was, it's not lip service when I say Sony was always really great, at least in how I experienced it. And I'd like to think other members of the team had a similar experience in their own way for their own craft. But for me, I always felt like these were certainly our games. I could not do it without the team, but I always felt like I was very satisfied by all the games I got to make with Sony, where I put my personal stamp on it.
Yeah.
So, God of War 1 and to an extent 2, but mostly 1, that's kind of what I wanted to say. If I wanted to say any more, I would have stuck around. It's not like, people have this weird idea. I don't know where it came from. They're like, oh, you got fired from Sony. I'm like, the only job I was ever fired from was a PA on that TV show Dinosaurs. Back in the 90s.
Oh man.
And I got fired for that. But other than, here's how much I got fired from Sony. When I said I was leaving to start a company, they said, let us fund your company. When that game came out, Calling All Cars, that bombed, and it didn't bomb. It got some good reviews, but it was the early days of PlayStation Network. And so, and then that game didn't do great. I left that company and Sony said, let us fund another company for you. Right. So nobody was fired. If I wanted to keep making God of Wars, I would have directed 2 and 3, and I would have been the Ed Boon of God of War, which is a great thing to be. But I said what I wanted to say. I got the itch scratched on God of War 1, and I've told the story before, but it's for me, I think it's a good example of what I'm trying to express, and it was a real thing. I remember me and my wife at the time took a vacation or took a break from everything after God of War because we'd all worked so hard and I had been away. And, we went places, and we also just, got massages around Los Angeles and went to, tourist place, just really de-plugged, de-stressed. And I remember walking into a spa once, and she left something in the car. So she was heading in, and I went back to the car to get it. And, I had this image in my head of Kratos all of a sudden. It was just like a flash of Kratos on this horse in the desert. And in the distance, there was this really cool looking tomb or Raiders Lost Ark temple or some kind of cool thing to explore. And in my mind's eye, I'm not an idiot. I don't think he was real. But there was a part of him that's real at a creative level. And he was like ushering me like, come on, let's go explore that thing. This is awesome. He was so excited. And I remember saying to him, I'm done. I don't want to do that anymore. And he was like, kind of almost like a puppy, right? He was like, but this is what we do. Yeah. And, but I did, I gave him a hug in my little head. And I said, go, man, have fun, have adventures. And he was so excited and he just raced off. And that was it. And I don't mean that like I'm crazy, but I mean that like there was a sense of closure, a sense of that was my God of War. And people ask me today, if you made a new one, would you put the sex? Yeah, I would. If I had the budget and they let me, I would love to have the sex and the violence back in God of War. And I'd love to have the blood and the
you had a controversial statement in a lot of media. A lot of media at least called it controversial. I don't think it was that controversial. No. But you said that Kratos has become a little soft.
Yeah, what I said was but to answer your first question, no, it doesn't bother me. If I had been fired and it had been pried out of my hands, I think I might have a very different response, but this was not that. This was me going, I got to do what I wanted to do. I was paid very well. I got opportunities that arose out of it. What's there to complain about?
And you had a sense of closure about it. So
and I also wasn't, it wasn't like, maybe Steve Ditko on Spider-Man, who was creating it, and it wasn't, although he apparently ripped off a Ben Cooper, but it's a fascinating story, but you should go look that up. It's really amazing that the visual of Spider-Man comes from a Halloween costume that was in the stores a year before Spider-Man.
What?
But, wow, yeah, go look at it. It's crazy story. Okay. But anyway, but it's not like I created it under the assumption that it was mine and I owned it. I don't get residuals. I don't own the IP. It was a job I did as an employee. I didn't look at it like that. It was a passion project, but I got paid really well. I got great bonuses. I got wonderful medical insurance for me and my family. Sony was a great company to work for. So I'm not also carrying this sense of, but he's mine. And, I understood when I made
some kind of pride, David, in having created two of the biggest gaming products right now, Twisted Metal with the TV show, and of course God of War. That's you. Yeah. That come from your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if pride is the right word. I'm grateful I got to do it. I love those properties. They are very much a big part of me, and I get a big kick out of the fact that they're continuing. The only thing that bothers me, and again, I get it because I have this show now, and I don't pick friends. I don't. I'm not going to say something nice just because I work for Sony. If they do something, my allegiance now is to the audience that watches my show. It's not to a developer that I go in and see every day. That's different. That my allegiance was to them when I worked for them, but I have a different job now, right? And I'm sure I'm not on anybody's favorite list over there because of that. But I would say I kind of get a little bit of annoyed, only in the sense that, it almost seems like they would prefer those connections to me in those properties. Like I don't feel I get trotted out as much as I think I would like to when they're talking about these things. But whatever. They don't owe that to me. And again, it's not mine. It's not even the team's, but it certainly is more of the team's than mine because I couldn't make it by myself. We all made it, But anyway, but no, it doesn't bother me. But the statement I said was, and as per the internet, most people who commented, I'm still getting comments on those videos today, which I appreciate because it makes me money. And I don't even mean that as a dick way. I told somebody today on my show, I said, every time I talk about Metroid Dread and I make a video of it, it's not a lot of money, but I can count on $60 to $150 every single time I make a Metroid Dread video. Even though I only played it for like 30 minutes. Okay. Oh, I got, Christmas is coming up. Let's make $100 to buy a present for this guy. Okay. I'll make a Metroid video. Time to make the donuts. But anyway, so my point though, is what I said was I loved 2018. I thought it was great. And I thought what Corey did at a narrative-based meta level was insanely clever. everything from, literally picking up 1,000 years where we left off, and he is still carrying the scars, but he's trying to move on.
Yeah. Sort of like an homage to his past, right?
Yeah,
it's not like it's a completely different God of War. It's the same one.
Yeah. Okay, that's where it gets into the weeds. But
missing the sex and the violence. But
so what I said though, and I love that, and I appreciated that, and I appreciated it at the meta level because the journalists loved it, the gamers who came up with it liked the fact, like they really globbed onto this narrative of like, I was a kid when I played it, now I'm grown up and the game grew up with me. Okay, whatever. I mean, I understand. I don't like people who think that way because I think people put too much premium on being mature at the cost of being real. But that said, though, I appreciate the sensibility. I thought it was really smart of Corey, really good game, really well paced, and I loved it. The trick was, and I said this before Ragnarok came out, was that once you pull that rabbit out of that hat, you better be sure that the character, because like the first game could get by on the fact that, the meta is carrying the character. Kratos is a character in 2018. I didn't find all that interesting as a starring character. I think he's a great character, but if I came to you and you'd never heard of God of War and I pitched you this guy, I wouldn't go, oh yeah, that's a hero for a new franchise. I wouldn't, but whatever, but it worked for 2018. But what they left Eric with and the writers with was a character that I don't think has he's not interesting enough to be a star. And since you no longer could lean on that meta of like, isn't that neat that this is that character and now he's this character and that's over. And you're just saying
if he didn't have that past to lean on and maybe the nostalgia or the background, then he wouldn't be.
I think it wasn't just the nostalgia and the background, but I think it was also just sort of that, like I said, the meta thing of Corey going, remember this from when you were a kid?
Sure.
Now you're an adult. And isn't that interesting how people change? I mean, there was something really clever in that.
I think the biggest
once that's over,
yeah,
and you're left with Kratos just as the character that he was in 2018 in Ragnarok, I don't find that character that interesting. And I think that what they did with it is they kind of wrote themselves up against a wall because I don't think he's interesting enough to carry the franchise forward for a very long time.
I don't think that's Kratos' problem. I actually think the biggest
he's not real. I mean, it's the writer's problem.
I made quotes. I think the biggest problem in God of War Ragnarok is that the writers, don't have enough balls.
They didn't have the balls to kill him.
To kill him or do interesting stuff with him. Because I think it's an interesting story, but they are not Neil Druckmann. Spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2. They are not bold enough to kill off their main hero.
Apparently.
Well, they may not have had the choice. And frankly, in God of War, how many times have they killed him? He just crawls out of hell. It's like a fucking cockroach, right? I mean, but I mean, there are ways to permanently get rid of him. But and look, I think if Corey would have gone in 2018 and said, I just want to make more God of War, but with, over the shoulder camera and a nice coat of paint, they'd probably say, you gotta, something's not working. People are tired of the formula. I get that. Right. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they should have killed him. You know what they should have done if they were going to do that, or if they were going to do what they did, then it's. I had somebody say this to me who was in the know. Trust me, they would know. I can't tell you who they are, and their take was, and this is just their opinion, but they would know that Santa Monica these days, Santa Monica Studios, puts a higher premium on storytelling than anything else. I mean, obviously production matters, gameplay matters, but
gameplay's also,
well, I'm not saying the gameplay was bad. I'm saying that in that, maybe to them, the character of Atreus made sense to be what he was and what he is. And it's like, but it's Loki or this or that or the other. It's like, okay, all that's great. But now you've left the player with two B characters.
Yeah.
Like if Atreus had become something in the first game, or a hint of it in the first game, and in the second game, like you can go online and look up concept art for Atreus that people were just like fan arting, but they made him badass.
Yeah.
Then it'd be like, okay, he's kind of passing the torch like they tried to do Indy and Shia LaBeouf, but it didn't work because nobody liked Shia LaBeouf. But if they could have done it with Atreus, they should have. But Atreus is annoying and whiny and kind of, I mean, I get it. But that's the character. He's a teenager. Yeah. Okay, fine. But you know what? I have teenagers. I'm not playing this because I want to recreate raising my child. I want
look at Ellie in The Last of Us, right? She's not annoying. She's also a teenager. You can write them better.
Right. Well, or you can write them with an eye to, and that's why people come at me on the line. They're like, well, it's so fucking arrogant.
So don't you hate,
wait,
sorry,
I got to say this. This. They come at me like it's like, you don't understand character development. And if the character doesn't change, then it's not, it's like, dude, fuck off. We are not talking about writing a novel. We are talking about big intellectual property, big budget, tentpole intellectual property creation. Okay, you've got to make characters, at least some of them. They don't have to be uninteresting. They can have arcs. They can have more human attributes. They don't have to be cardboard, but they also have to get butts and seats. Okay, there's a reason Transformers does really, really well, even though it's just kind of and a lot of wonderful movies don't. Okay, it's not. There's a business part to it as well, and so somebody should have looked at it and said either Kratos has to get better in Ragnarok so he can carry the game, or Atreus has to become somebody you're like, dude, that guy has become awesome. I not only want to play him in this game, but I want to get a standalone day one 4-hour game. And if that works, I want a series with the guy. But instead you've got two characters that if it wasn't for the fact they were attached to God of War, in my opinion, would probably not be compelling enough to sustain a franchise. And I said, it's gone soft in the sense that it's not soft like it's some loser game. And I don't mean that. I mean, it's so somber and it's so forlorn and it's so, everything's so heavy. It's like the high adventure, which doesn't have to be 100%, but that sense of fun of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. There was some of that in God of War, and I don't think that means it has to always stay there, but it just feels like a downer.
It's like the
I don't think I agree with that part. I think the fun is still there, but it's a very, very good point that you bring up about both Atreus and God of War. What the fuck what's his name?
You should know, but you can't remember because he's not interested.
So I think it's I think that's a thing called The Last of Us.
I know
disease.
You were talking. Oh, I know you were talking, and I know in your head. I know in your head you're like, this motherfucker got a lot of views because his experience. I don't want to interrupt him and be a dick, but I was fucking talking. Allow me to be your inner monologue, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let
me finish that one.
What the fuck?
But I really agree that where they left off the characters in the end of Ragnarok is none of those characters are ready to support the next game. I think I completely agree with that. And I also agree with you that Kratos didn't have to necessarily die, but I felt like the way the game was written, that it was pointing toward that direction. And everything was building up around him passing the torch, so to speak, and permanently dying. And in the end, when they didn't deliver on that and they just left it on a cliffhanger, it just left me with a very sour taste in my mouth towards the end. And it just deflated the whole experience, because I thought it was a great game. Like the first one, I thought it was awesome, but all the way up to the end, but it felt like they didn't pull through with it. But it's a very good point.
You've got to balance that, because, you know, if you look at the sales numbers for Last of Us 2, which have been revealed in the Insomniac leak, I don't know if it's as cut and dry as this. I know Last of Us 1 was out longer. It was on some more platforms. I loved The Last of Us 2. I was not a huge fan of the first one, but I adored the second one. So I'm not knocking the game, but it didn't sell as well. And if you get rid of the fanboys that are just, idiots who are like, I don't like anything that's not just, red, white, and blue, and, anything woke, I hate, whatever. There are people who didn't like that Joel died. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't a good story, and it doesn't mean that it shouldn't have happened, but it wouldn't surprise me if Sony was like, look, we already killed Joel. We can't let you kill this guy. But that doesn't mean they couldn't have written a satisfying ending, but I don't know if it wasn't satisfying because I was so fucking tired of playing it after 12 hours.
Did you complete The Last of Us Part 2?
Did I what?
Did you complete The Last of Us Part 2?
No, here's why, and I'm going to get the new one, the remaster, and finish it, because I played all the way up until I changed to Abby.
Yeah.
And I had no problem with Abby as a character. I like her. I think she's cool. But what it was, I'm kind of a completionist, and I was so invested in all the upgrades for Ellie and collecting everything. And the minute I become Abby and I'm back to nothing, in terms of inventory and mechanics and all that. And I know that she ramps up faster than Ellie did, but it just deflated my momentum. And so again, I think it's one of those things where I think narratively it was a smart idea, but I think gameplay wise, it was a bad idea. Unless what they could have switched between Ellie and Abby sooner. And so it was like, okay, play Ellie for a few hours and then play Abby for a few hours or whatever. But the fact that it was so demarcated, it made, at least for me, a player like me, very easy to walk away.
So I think The Last of Us Part 2 is the best video game ever made. Okay. I have never been so emotionally invested in a story and been so conflicted about my actions. I think it's the most important story in video games. And as a movie TV guy over here, I think what the video game industry is able to do with storytelling is incredible. I am so envious about what they are able to do, because you feel all the actions. Like you talked about horror games in our earlier segment, right? And I have, I'm the same way. I'm scared when I'm playing video games, but I'm not scared when I'm watching horror movies, because I feel the pain, I feel the shock when I'm playing the character, right? And I think what they were able to do in The Last of Us Part 2, they were able to force you to look at a story from a different point of view. And I think it's so important right now in our day of age, still here in 2024, that you are that you are able to see that you are not always the hero of your story. You are maybe the villain. And I love it. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
I would push back a little bit that you need to play more indie games, because the one thing that bothers me about a lot, and I love Last of Us 2, I'm not knocking it, other than that pacing issue that I struggled with, but is because they're the biggest and boldest and they get the marketing, everybody attributes and kudos those games about things like that. But in reality, they are some of the, it's better than nothing. But, you mentioned earlier from Switzerland, you mentioned the developer of Inside.
Well, that's here in Denmark, right?
It's the same fucking
thing. Oh my God. David Jaffe!
I mean, because listen, it's like, I've shit bigger countries than, I just want to live there. Man. I just want to live there, man. They just won't let me in. If you guys give me a visa,
come.
If you give me a visa,
you can live in my house, David.
It's nice as you don't call it fucking Sweden. You can come here, okay? Well, in fact, you can sleep on my couch if you want to, but don't call it fucking Sweden.
I'll end up in Antarctica going, is this the place? Is this yeah. But anyway, but listen. So, there are games out there that are actually doing what you're talking about. Not a lot, because it's hard. And we haven't looked at video games as an art form. Like, people will look at The Last of Us and say, oh, we're looking at that as an art form. Okay, sort of fine. And that's great. I'm not knocking the game. But telling stories and communicating ideas through the interactive experience is so much more powerful than watching a really wonderfully made cutscene with a really good story. And that is what is causing you to feel a certain way when you're just hitting the button and killing someone, right? True. So Inside is a great example. Inside has this moment, if you've finished it, it's actually in the middle, where you're the kid and you're trying to sneak past security and everybody's waiting in a line. And the only way you can get past that checkpoint is to follow the motions of all the other people in the line and sort of conform to everything they're doing so you don't stand out. Well, that's not a story point, and that's not a character pontificating on the value of potentially conformity if it means survival. you literally get to experience, I may want to do other things with my controller right now, but I have to do what everyone else is doing in order to progress in this game. I played a game called Desperados 3 recently, or a couple years ago. I loved it. Brilliant game. Finished the game. The whole game's thematic is about this guy at the beginning has kind of pushed everybody in his life away, and as the game goes on, he kind of reconnects with his friends and loved ones. And the only way to kill the boss at the end, and this is not in a cutscene again, it's not like a wise character in a motion capture suit going, well, let me tell you about the value of friendship. You literally, as a player, the only way to kill and win the game is to realize that the only solve to the puzzle, the only key to the lock is to use every one of those 5 friends that you've gathered and use them all together and all at the same time doing different things that they're good at. The minute you hit execute, because you can stop time and tell them what they want to do, it's turn-based, the boss is dead in an instant. And in that, if you're kind of tuned into thinking about video games mechanics as metaphor or video game mechanics as storytelling, you go, oh my God, I experienced mechanically the message of the game. It's not, you know, and that is, you know, people used to ask me, should I go to video game school like college? And in the past, no. If your goal is to get a job, don't worry about it. Just go work, make your shit. But there's not enough critical studies of the medium happening where people really, like when I went to SC and I took a bunch of film classes, you know, people would make fun of it, but you would have critical study classes where, you know, you would sit there and have an entire class about why Spielberg made the barrels in Jaws yellow and how yellow and red in that movie are metaphorical for a variety of things that are happening. Now, whether or not that is always intentional on the part of the creator is irrelevant. The point is the medium is rich enough to allow that kind of analysis and thought and seeing yourself in it. And we've trained ourselves to look at literature that way and movies that way, but we don't with games. So when I hear you rave about the Last of Us Part 2, which again, I love, and I hear the industry rave about it, and I go, but that's kind of, you know, the baby version of it. It's like that. They did it by using Hollywood's tools that has been around since, you know, 1890, to make you feel things. And then when you played the game, you carried over what the movies gave you, you know, but the games, and I'm not saying they didn't do any of the stuff you're talking about, because you did get to play the good guy and the bad guy. And I know what you're talking about there, where it's, you know, but there are games that do it in such a more interesting way that never see the light of day in terms of conversation. And it really is a shame because the medium is brilliant.
David, I think this is so fascinating. I think this is so fascinating to what do you want to say?
I want to say, I appreciate games that are able to convey the story and these meanings in a more subtle way through mechanics, like you point out with Limbo is a very good example of that.
Yeah, not Limbo, Inside. I didn't
Inside. Sorry, but same goes for Limbo, by the way. But okay, but I would say that it doesn't change the fact that The Last of Us still made a gazillion times higher impression on me emotionally, and it's just, and I don't feel like it's the writers or the characters telling you how to feel or really cutting everything out. I think it just springs out naturally from the way it's written, and the character interactions are just so real, and there's so much emotion that are also subtly, told
there
in another way.
There are so many subtle moments. As I said, there.
Give me an example.
Yeah, well, so I don't want to spoil.
Moment.
I don't want to spoil too much, but so I'm playing the Last of Us Part 2 remastered right now, right? And in the story, Ellie goes out for revenge, and she wants to kill the people who killed Joel, her father, in quotes. And she's on her journey. She takes this this girl. I can't remember her name, but she's madly
the girl she likes, the Dina girl.
Dina, yeah. And she's with, but she is, spoilers, pregnant, and she's pregnant with her ex-boyfriend, and her ex-boyfriend shows up. And there's this
not Ellie. Dina is pregnant.
Dina is pregnant. Yeah,
right.
And there's this little moment where Jesse, her Dina's ex-boyfriend, and the father to her child shows up, and the game takes its time to show Ellie turn away And just, you can see it. It's a little subtle moment in her face, but you can see the pain that she wants them to be happy. She wants them to go live their life, and she won't intervene.
Right. And that moment occurs in a cutscene, right?
Yes.
Right.
That's
what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying that moment isn't a great moment. I'm not saying that moment wasn't incredibly well done. But to say that game affected you emotionally more than a small mechanics-based game.
Okay, let me come with another.
It's kind of like saying when the first movies were coming out, or the Nickelodeons, it's like, well, movies don't have the power that plays do, because I went and saw, a play version of Anna Karenina, and I was weeping by the end, but I just saw this Nickelodeon movie and it was interesting. It's like, because that medium of storytelling in that way has been around for a very, very long time. And
then let me come with another example. That is gameplay. Okay, so I'm switching to Uncharted 4. If you have played that game,
I got bored of it. I think Neil Druckmann's a terrible director for that franchise. He's great for Last of Us. He's too serious. That franchise is supposed to be high adventure and fun, and James Bond meets Indiana Jones, and it just was so fucking. It's like, Neil, have some fucking fun. I don't know the guy. I'm sure he's a good guy.
I really loved Indiana Jones 4, but I actually agree. I think he got the same problem that James Mangold, the director of the newest Indiana Jones movie, got.
I agree.
He doesn't have a funny bone in his body, and Indiana Jones is a funny character. And there's so many times when I watch The Dial of Destiny, the new Indiana Jones movie, where I was thinking, where are all the cutaway reactions of Indiana Jones making a face?
And I don't want to see Indiana Jones that way.
No.
Recast the motherfucker. It's a high adventure series. But anyway, go back to the last one.
So Uncharted 4. There's this scene where not Indiana Jones, almost. Nathan Drake. Yeah. He has snuck away on adventure, and his wife has told him, no, don't do it. And his wife shows up, and they have this argument that gets interrupted, and you are forced to drive away in this car gameplay in silence, right? In silence. The atmosphere is so bad.
Okay, I didn't get that far because I got bored in that game, but that's great. Like I said, I'm not saying they don't do it, and I'm not saying Neil Druckmann's not aware of it. I'm saying that I feel like I need to bring voice more to the fact that when I hear people raving about these games, it's kind of like hearing somebody rave about, and I loved In-Game. But they've never seen movies other than In-Game and movies like it. And it's like, that movie's so filled with pathos, and I cried, and Iron Man died. And again, I fucking love that movie.
It's a great movie.
But it's like they've never seen an indie film or a smaller film and realized that the medium is so much more capable if you're interested in more subtle and deep emotions.
I think it's an art that you are able to take that kind of storytelling up to a AAA blockbuster movie like In-Game, like The Last of Us, and it's not just in indie movies or indie games, for that example.
Sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, honestly, here's what I'll tell you. Back in the day, I'm 52. I'm a kid of the 80s and 70s. And one of the things I loved about movies when I was a kid was it seemed like that was the point where it was the perfect balance between art and commerce. It's not like they were making movies for charity, but you had a healthy, the studios were run by people who still loved movies, even though they were starting in the 90s to get bought by Sony and all these other Massachusetts and all these other companies. But at the time, so you could have these blockbusters, whether it's Raiders or Empire or even The Rocketeer or Terminator 2, like in that zone of like 75 to 92, maybe ending with Jurassic Park. Maybe you can go a little further if you have a couple examples. You were able to get blockbusters that were big entertainment, but they had heart and they had character that landed. And then somewhere around Michael Bay with the Transformers movies, and even to an extent, I think Marvel does so well or did so well because they did have that heart. But most of the big blockbusters of the summer now are pretty much just show reels of special effects.
I agree. And you're talking your way into a very interesting talking point about video games, because are video games becoming too expensive? I didn't like Spider-Man 2. I think Spider-Man 2 was not as interesting like the first one. I think the boss fights in Spider-Man 2 was boring as fuck and not very imaginative. But it's a big blockbuster. It checks all the boxes, right?
Yeah.
It fulfills its purpose in some way, like a lot of movie blockbusters does, right? Mm-hmm. So, are they getting too expensive to be made? Sean Layden has warned us about this.
Yeah, well, I think the most interesting thing to me about it, and I think somebody who loves and understands film and film history, that's where I first realized it, is that there was some point where I started to understand that the business model dictates the art form. So I would look at, why are movies about 2 hours, give or take? Romantic comedies or comedies 90 minutes, dramas maybe a little longer, but and short of an every now and then 3 hour thing like a Nolan film or a James Cameron film, most movies kind of live in that 90 to 120. And it's not because that's the perfect amount of time to tell a story on film. It's because the amount of times that the theater can show the movie per day allows the exhibitor to make enough money that it's profitable, and it allows the studio to make movies that are good enough that people come see them at that running time. And all we have to do is look at things like streaming services where television series that are long form have become beloved. It's not like the audience doesn't want longer stories, but that's sort of what they've been served up because that's what the business model demanded. Mm-hmm. So in video games, I think right now, the kind of AAA games you're talking about are mostly becoming unsustainable if you're talking about spending $70 or even $100 to buy this video game, because that's kind of the business model, which is, you download it or you buy it in a store. And so it's kind of a one-off purchase and then some DLC and blah, blah, blah. And it's Sean, one of the things Sean Layden says that people don't bring up a lot is he's like, the reason the math doesn't work and gets less and less possible to work is that the core gamer, the people that buy The Last of Us or Starfield, or well, not Starfield because you don't buy it mostly, but you know what I'm saying, kind of core games, that audience has not grown since 92, he said. Yeah. So he says the pie has gotten split up differently. Sometimes Nintendo has more of it, sometimes Sony. In the 360 era, Xbox had more of it, at least than they have now. But you're still dealing with like 250 to 300 million people. And it's not like that's growing, right? It's not like the cell phone market where that is growing. And so ultimately, that is the business model we're in. And I agree with him. I think most people agree that it's not really sustainable. And I think that's why you're seeing remasters a lot. That's why you're seeing so few first-party games coming out. It's amazing to look back at the output of first-party Sony in PS1, PS2, and PS3. You would have sometimes over 70 games from first-party in PS1 era. Now you're lucky to get 2.
Yeah.
2. Okay, so hang on. But what I will say, though, and that's one of the reasons I'm pretty bullish on subscription services, because I think what that allows is the business model absolutely changes the art form. And in that, you're not only going to get things like Pentiment or smaller, more interesting games, or even something like Valhalla that just came out, God of War that's free. But you're also going to get like a studio, like a Sony might say, look, ultimately it's going to be like a Netflix or an Amazon, or that will be your consoles, your streaming service. You'll have one and you'll get tired of it and you'll churn out and get something else. They'll have those 1 or 2 a year, big fucking budget, crazy things because it'll drive subscriptions. But they won't be tied to that.
I think what's
people
wonderful,
will take chances on things that aren't as expensive. Just like on Netflix, if I say, hey, there's this weird sci-fi film you've never heard of, I'll watch it for 5 minutes. If I like it, cool. But if I say, here, go buy a ticket and take your family out to see this thing you've never heard of and the trailer is weird, you wouldn't go.
I think what's wonderful with Microsoft, at least with Phil Spencer at the helm, is that they are allowing all this creativity. They are allowing their studios. We heard just a month after they announced they were buying Activision Blizzard, we heard that Infinity Ward was starting working on this third-person RPG game, right?
Infinity Ward?
Yeah.
Wow, the Medal of Honor guys?
No, the Call of Duty guys.
Call of Duty guys. Call of Duty guys.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's a rumor or a story that came out last year, 2 years ago actually, and that was, of course, after Microsoft has announced this, and we are seeing games like Hi-Fi Rush, we are seeing Pentiment, Grounded, all these kind of stuff. We are seeing creative freedom. We are seeing under the Xbox banner all these new IPs.
Yeah,
and I think that's wonderful.
I think it's wonderful too, and I think it also is good for the art form, because suddenly, like Sea of Stars. I don't know if you guys have played Sea of Stars.
I love it.
Okay, it's one of my top 3 games of the year. I haven't finished it, but I love it. And it's not that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to play that, but I was playing so many other things that if it wasn't on Game Pass, and it didn't just pop up on Xbox PC because that's what I had on, I probably wouldn't have gotten to it maybe ever. Right. But it's also just the fact that you've got the ability to collide with stuff that may become your next favorite game.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know it, or you have the ability to say, I want to make a game like Ragnarok or Valhalla, or I want to make a Gears of War like Hivebusters, which is only 4 hours, but it only needs to be 4 hours. They're not adding all this fucking fat to the game to justify a $70 price point.
And also, like the game Avowed, it came out last year that they changed direction. And they were allowed to do that because of Microsoft, right? It was starting as this game as a service game. And they thought,
who was publishing it at first?
I think it was Obsidian, and they were having, and of course Microsoft, and they were having meetings. The producers said this, that they were having meetings, and they were just, talking about game as a service games, because that was the talk of the town. But when they started developing the game, they found out, wow, this is not our strengths.
Right.
So they changed. They made it the Outer Worlds kind of game with Skyrim skin on it, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool, but that is allowed under Microsoft, and that's because they have so goddamn much money, right?
Sure, but it's also because I think they look at it and say, this is the only way that we can actually move forward. Yeah. Because if all we're going to do is copy Sony, and Sony has, they could also copy Nintendo, which is sustainable because they put their gameplay first and not their production value first. But if you're going to build your house on the shaky foundation of production value, which basically means money, there's going to come a point where if you can't grow your audience, you're fucked. But the neat thing about it is subscription services, but also we are eventually, and I don't care what the audience says, because I had to deal with this with digital. I remember being at a GameStop conference. Me and Cliff Blazinski were talking, going down an escalator. And we were both like, dude, the future's fucking digital. Once these things become, downloadable, the fans are like, no, never, never. They're very vocal minority. 92% of the games in the UK last year were digital. It's just the way it is. And kids today, I don't have kids, but my kids never think about owning Fortnite or Roblox or Minecraft. No. It's not like, oh, get Minecraft off the shelf. It's just there, right? So the same thing with streaming. We're not there yet in a lot of places, and I get it. But we will get there sooner than later. And when you look, I invite you to go right now or whenever you want. I don't give a fuck when you do it. What am I, your dad? Go when you want to YouTube and look up like the highest level version of Cyberpunk. Like, there's mods and stuff that's like, and imagine that is what's on your television, because there are companies once a year or twice a year, because they want you to go, hey, if you want to play Cyberpunk, it's only on Game Pass. If you want to play Cyberpunk, it's only on PS Plus or whatever. But there's no more consoles. So you don't have to worry about upgrades and all that bullshit. You just play it and you're like, holy shit. Yeah. Right? That's Of course,
there's a lot of people who they talk a lot about Xbox isn't selling that much consoles, and so they are missing the point of Microsoft's strategy right now, because they don't care about console sales. They don't care about selling, as of course they care a little, right? But they are available on PC, they are available on consoles, they are available on your smart TV, on your phone via cloud, right?
And they'll probably soon be available on PlayStation. I mean, it's probably, probably. It's not a bad idea. But regardless, though, I don't know. But I mean, I think that's where it's going. But I mean, regardless of that, and I don't know that. I'm just saying it seems logical. Okay. But even that, though, I don't know how much of them saying, "Oh, we don't care about consoles" is just lip service, so they don't have to look bad because they're shit in the bed. But to be perfectly fair, though, right now Xbox doesn't deserve to be selling the amount of consoles Sony is, only because you and I care about Hi-Fi Rush, you and I care about Pentiment, exactly. You and I, but they have yet to put out enough commercial content on Xbox, and they have done a shit job marketing Game Pass.
We actually had I had a meeting. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this, but so in Europe, in Europe they are not selling very well here in Europe. There was an article last year about the Xbox market collapsing here in Europe, and it's because they do not promote their stuff.
No.
PlayStation
But what are they going to promote, right? I mean, but if what I've said over and over is
they don't have a Spider-Man 2 to sell during the holidays. No. I mean, that's what Sony has that Microsoft really lacks at the moment.
But if you think about this, let's just take September, okay? Mm-hmm. And let's assume Indiana Jones is good. And let's assume it comes out this year, which that's the rumor. And let's assume that we get the new Call of Duty on Game Pass and 3 or 4, and Avowed is great, whatever. And suddenly, and let's just assume that Microsoft says, you know what, we're going to put all of that on PlayStation, which I think they should, because it's the best marketing in the world if they actually follow through, which is to do a commercial that says, hey, you want to play the hottest, best reviewed games of the year? Indiana Jones, the new Call of Duty, this Avowed game, and let's just say a bunch of other things, whatever, things that are third party. Well, you could pay and play that on PlayStation. Not a problem, pal. It'll cost you $380 for your Christmas presents. Or you could give us $15 a month. You get them all. Mm-hmm. You get them fucking all, right? That's all they need to do. But they can't do that with Hi-Fi Rush. They can't do that with Pentiment. They can't really do that with Starfield. They certainly can't do it with Redfall. So that's why I've always said I love Phil Spencer's vision. But so far, their output as a studio has been really their Achilles heel. Yeah. And maybe they've been able to buy their way into success. I hope so. Yeah. If they say, hey, there's a new Doom coming after Christmas, after all that advertisement, and hey, in January or February, there's a new Doom coming, and there's a new Forza Horizon coming. And that's in Game Pass too. You goddamn right. So fuck it. I'll take that, Fred.
David, I'll just quickly change the subject because I need to ask you this. The way I found your channel and the way I discovered you.
Yes. How did you discover me? I saw you sitting at the counter there ordering a cream soda, and I said, he's going to be a star. And I went up to him and I said, sir, I'm making a motion picture about P.T. Barnum. Would you like to be involved? And I said, well, I don't know. Who would I play, P.T. Barnum? And you said, of course not. You're going to play a monkey. And I said, fine. And suddenly I became the world's first expert acting as monkeys. I am the biggest monkey star in the world.
I am a huge fan of Sacred Symbols. And
I think I'm having an aneurysm. Go ahead.
I'm a huge
Sacred
fan.
Symbols is awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I really love Colin Moriarty as a video game journalist. And Arkaden,
good dude.
Arkaden is inspired a lot of the old Beyond show that he and Greg Miller did. Mm-hmm. So, but I have always wondered, why do the media hate him so much? And why don't they take him seriously?
And the publishers hate him also.
Publishers, apparently.
Well, I mean, okay.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
First off, I don't know if you're... Well, go ahead.
Okay, So I found you because you made a video called Let's Talk... We Need to Talk About Colin, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you raised all these questions yourself. Mm-hmm. Now you have learned, you got to know him better. I know that you often are on his podcast, Sacred Temples.
I'll be on this Friday.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But have you gotten the answers now? What is the...
Well, I don't really know. I mean, there are people who will offer up their reasons, but I think when it comes to the journalists that don't like him, I think there is, and this is certainly not all of them. And I say this as a, again, very progressive left-leaning guy.
We are as well here in Denmark.
Right. I would put a fucking raccoon up my butthole before I would vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not those people. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I think as progressive and liberal as I am, I still think unless you're going to kind of do something bad, mm-hmm. you have a right to your views. And I think there is a group of games media folks that really want to call themselves progressive and liberal, but they're actually anything but. Yeah. They sound a lot more like far right people, where it's like, you're not allowed to even have opinions we don't like. And so I think part of it is Colin, and he's changed, not that matters, but he was certainly, when he came on the scene, he was a relatively vocal, supporter of more conservative policies and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that plays a part. Maybe it plays a huge part. I don't know. The joke he made about peace and quiet, he made this joke on Twitter that got him to leave kind of funny, where it was International Women's Day. And he said, peace and quiet, day without a woman or something. Yeah. And people were like, oh, no. Where are my pearls? I must go get pearls because I must clutch them. And it's just like, is it a sexist joke? Yeah, it is. But is it a harmless, stupid ABC sitcom joke that you would probably hear on Home Improvement? And maybe we should get to the point where that trope is sort of starts to go away, just like the dopey husband trope that can't do anything starts to go away. Sure. But you know what? Fuck you. Because he said it. He's allowed to say it. You don't have to agree with it. But to call the guy sexist, like he doesn't like women or he thinks women are lesser, maybe he does, but that joke would not give you any indication of that fact. So I think that pissed off some people because they want to get pissed off, and they gives them a purpose. They're writing about fucking, Grand Theft Auto 6. What are they doing with their lives? Right. And I mean that. I mean, I think a lot of these people, I think they'd rather be writing about something else. I don't think they take a lot of pride in, I don't know this for a fact. You could, if you pin Patrick Klepek down, he might say, no, are you out of your fucking mind? All I want to do is bring, and he might. But I think there's kind of an insecurity there, and they glom on to this like, oh, I can be about something. So I think that dinged him. And then, with the publishers, I'm sure that contributed, like when PAX didn't invite him.
Yeah. The crazy, right?
Disinvited him. Yeah. I saw the other day, there's a convention going on where that woman from was it Mandalorian? Gina Carano? Yeah. She got invited, and then a lot of people are losing their shit, and now it looks like she might get uninvited. And I'm I'm not Jewish, but I was raised Jewish. I have Jews in my family on my dad's side. Look, I thought what she said about the Holocaust was ignorant, and I thought it was stupid. But I think it wasn't hateful. No. It was just dumb, but in terms of she wasn't educated enough on it. And even if she was, I don't care. She's not bothering. She has a right to have a stupid opinion. This is
all we talk about here in the Western countries, like the USA and Denmark, for instance, is freedom of speech, right? Mm-hmm. But we are apparently not allowed to say anything. We are not allowed to mean stuff that have opinions that you do not agree with.
Well, we're allowed, but people will say, well, she's allowed to say it, but she's not, she doesn't have freedom of consequences. And it's like, no, she doesn't. But you know what? should the consequences of somebody saying something stupid, have you, I'll tell you what, you apply that to your shit. Yeah. Have you never said something stupid?
I say you know what? So much stupid shit.
Right. And
I can vouch for that.
Even, and maybe even if you educated her and she said, yeah, I don't care. I still don't agree. I really just don't like Jewish people. You know what? You have a right not to like Jewish people. I will call you out on it. Yeah. I will try to educate you. I will not want to be with you in any kind of scenario. And I get a company might say, well, that's going to offend our audience, so we don't want to hire her. But the idea that what she said,
let her opinion stand the test of public discourse. Like just like let her stand up and yell those things, and
that's right.
Go about her day and think whatever. Shut up,
So I think a lot of these guys who push back on Colin are probably just a bunch of fucking weak babies who don't really walk the walk. And I think as for the publishers, I think what Colin's doing is exactly right. Fuck the publishers. Because it is ridiculous to watch these influencers and journalists put their fucking noses up the butts of these fucking companies. So the Insomniac $1 trillion companies.
Oh yeah, the Insomniac League. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm like, look, I was just talking to a guy last night on Twitter, direct message that I love very much. Great dude from Insomniac. But it's not that I don't feel for the guys at Insomniac.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to give away people's personal
No, fuck that shit. I mean, but yeah.
It's news. All the leaks are news stories, right?
Yeah. And then when you've got some of these people like, we're not going to do it. Fuck you. You know what Colin said on, I think it was Sacred Symbols the other day. He said, if these guys would have just said, we have relationships there. Yeah. We prioritize more than giving you some news about leaks that you can find on your own, being able to bring you coverage before anyone else that we have access to. Then I think most people would say, okay, it's a business. We get it. We would prefer Kind of Funny. We would prefer Kind of Funny continues to get great screen grabs and interviews and footage and early plays from Insomniac. Good call, Greg Miller. But don't fucking sit there and preach ethics and journalism when you know good and goddamn well that you're not applying that to anyone else. So fuck you.
I agree. I agree. And I think it's such a shame because I think that...
It's not a shame though, because Colin is making bank.
Yeah.
The audience gets it. The audience appreciates the fact that he
some of the audience does. But I think that the way Colin is treated in the media or in the context of other people talking about him, I don't think that's fair, because I think Colin Moriarty is one of the greatest...
Are people still talking shit? Or, I mean... It feels like he's just doing his own thing that they don't really
First of all, Colin Moriarty has been like, there was this podcast Beyond reunion 300 episode. He wasn't invited. He was one of the insane.
Oh,
wow. There was
holy shit.
When there was this Kind of Funny reunion, right? He wasn't invited. Why? Why not?
What the fuck?
I know him and Greg and Tim Geddes. I mean, he was on my show and he told me about, Tim pulling him aside and really saying some hurtful stuff. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. I mean, what Colin said was true, but whether Tim actually was lying or it was true, I don't know, where he's like, you make Greg really unhappy and we don't want you here. I mean, hell, if I was, I know Colin's a mature guy. Maybe he would want to reconcile with Greg, but I would never want to reconcile with Geddes at this point if I was him. So, but I get it. I don't know. People are petty. And a lot of it, here's what I would ask you guys is it similar in a country like yours? Because one of the things I always associate pettiness with when it comes to things like that is it's so dog eat dog in America, where you have to just fight and scrimp and battle to get ahead, because if you don't, again, there's no safety net for you. And so it brings out the worst in people. But when you have a culture like y'all's, where you do have your medicine paid for and you do have education paid for, and if you lose your job, you're not going to be on the street in a week, you've got some cushion. Do you guys feel that that kind of behavior towards Colin is still rampant where you are, and it's got nothing to do with the social system?
I think so. I mean, based on the reception, the way we've handled characters who had made some controversial statements in media, and especially like in Danish TV media, right, and news coverage, where stuff has come out about these characters and stuff they have done from 20 years ago, right, at a dinner party or whatever. Yeah. I mean, the way we've handled this stuff, which is like publicly shunning them and
Yeah,
to some extent at least. I mean, of course, there are examples of the opposite also, but I think it's much the same thing. I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with whether we have this competition or the social safety net. I think it's just very, unfortunately, a very
tribal
human thing. Like it's whatever. Yeah. It's more.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame.
Are confused about,
but I think it's a mindset right now, right? It's a mindset. This has been. I hate the term woke because I see myself as a woke kind of guy, right?
I'm super woke,
but I do not see myself as an extreme person who acts extreme in all kind of situations, right? And have extreme views and hunt people for that instant. I think that's super sad.
But a lot again. A lot of it's the news, right? I mean, the fact that you have in America, at least, people that don't know the difference between Hamas and the Palestinian innocents, and so they're actually out in the street chanting Hamas log lines like from the ocean to from the land to the sea to suggest the eradication of Jews all over the world. And there's no nuance for a lot of people, not because they're idiots, but because the news is just so much about making their money that they don't care.
So in Denmark and in America as well, when you enter a news website right now, right, it's always every day it's catastrophic. It's all the negative disaster headpieces all the time, and it's the same on YouTube, right? It's the disaster headpieces that stands out. It's those that get the clicks. And can you really blame the media?
Yes.
That was my point.
Well, I mean, it depends what you really can blame, at least in America, is the deregulation of the news media. Right. Cable news came along and it's allowed to call itself news. That should be illegal. They should be able to say what they want, but news needs to be a protected category. If you're going to advertise your product as news,
should have some objective value to it. There should be some fact
there can't be. I mean, because it's going to be, you're going to have bias, but there's an attempt to fix bias in a good news organization. And there's an attempt in a bad one that's actually not news, but entertainment disguised as news, that's just going to totally be biased all day long. So I think in America, at least, that's where a lot of it comes from, because people will watch something like Fox News or MSNBC. I mean, it's not all the bad is on the right, but in a lot of ways with the news, it tends to be more the right, but it's still, they will push their agenda and they will push what they know makes them money.
I think the extremes on the left side and the extremes on the right side are equally insane.
I think it depends on the subject, right? I don't know if, and I like AOC, but I don't know if it's practical to get what she wants at an environmental level, but a lot of people would call her fringe left. But I think that's very different than saying we should rip out parts of the Constitution that Trump doesn't like, which is what you hear on the far right.
I think there's a big difference about what's extreme left in Denmark and what's extreme left in the United States.
I would imagine. What is extreme left in Denmark?
I think that's communism, right?
Something that borders on
but like what specifically? Because communism, even in America, has become synonymous with socialism.
And that's Denmark.
Socialist. What's that? Right.
That's socialism. That's Denmark. We are a socialistic country.
But in America, socialism is almost a bad word that is the same as communism.
Yes.
It's like, you're a socialist. It's like, we're all socialist. You know how you got to work today, you stupid motherfucker, on roads that we all paid for. But so what is a far left communistic idea of the far left in Denmark? Switzerland.
You're asking someone who doesn't follow along that much in politics. I'm afraid I can't give you a good answer.
I do, but I can't think about a good example of what's an extreme left. But I think that an extreme, in quotes, woke person is in many examples extreme left here in Denmark. But I think there are a lot of extreme lefts that want us to go out of the EU, like the UK did, and all kind of stuff. And
I would push back a little bit, because I know your audience is probably pushing back right now and saying, and saying these guys just said the far left of our country is communist and super far woke and it's as bad as the right, but they can't really give any examples of that. Isn't that? That's troubling.
Yeah, but I can't. So the far right in Denmark is easier because that's just extremely racist people. Extremely racist.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and that's. But when you go to the extreme left side, it's more that. So in Denmark, our society is. We have free healthcare, free doctors, and all that kind of stuff. School system is free because of our taxation, right?
Yeah,
we pay like 40% in taxes, and that is fantastic. I think that is working. And if you see these surveys every year that says what is the happiest country in the world,
it's you guys. That's right.
It's always Finland, Denmark, Scandinavia.
Because we're barely in the top 10 if we make the top 10 at all, which we rarely do.
No, we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. We just have to worry about being happy and doing stuff that we like.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
You were dodging the question where I said you insult the far left in Denmark, but you seem incapable.
Oh yeah, exactly. So my opinion. I was saying that the problem is that when you're over in the far left side, it's about more taxation. It's about giving
also immigration
more to
laws
the state.
Is one of the distinguishing factors, right? So on the left, the far left, they just open the borders, whatever, and it's so that tends to.
Let
be
me
one
ask
of
you about that because we get that in America too, and people say the left just wants open borders. I can't name one progressive left person I know that is like, we don't need borders, let everybody come in. Are you telling me that there's actually in Denmark, there's a percentage of people that if you ask them, they think we need no borders, we need no regulation, we should let anybody who wants to come in, come in?
No, I mean, it's not a matter of like dissolving all of the borders and just, letting anyone in, but it's just about providing more services and to greet these immigrants and do more for integration and all these things. So of course, it's not just dissolving the borders, but it's just leaving much more onto that. Whereas on the right, you typically have the more, we should just have more border control, and we should kick them out, and these services should be focused around, throwing them out again once we take them in, and trying to push them back to where they came from, or whatever. I think that's one of the.
I think it's becoming. I mean, we're getting a lot of problems with that in America too, with the immigration. But it's like end of the day, it's not dissimilar to the AI argument, which is we can argue and disagree with AI all we want. I happen to love AI, and I think it's a great tool. But
we
whatever.
did talk about that also.
But ultimately, though, it is going to disrupt the fuck out of this planet. And that's okay if we as a planet come together and figure out how can we benefit from this, but still not all become peasants living in the dirt like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But
you have this election coming up, and the election in the United States, it means a lot for the Western society. Because the United States is the front country, they are our protectors in NATO, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So we follow that really, really closely here in Denmark and in the rest of the Western society. But aren't you afraid of AI? AI coming in because AI is making fake news a reality. I'm not afraid of AI, and I'm excited for AI. What I'm afraid of is we as a species so far have been really slow to intellectually respond to things like it. So I think AI has the potential to make our lives amazing. Yeah.
And it already does in small little ways all the time. It has actually for decades, if you want to call AI machines, but whatever. Yeah. But I think until we get our shit together and kind of go, okay, but here's what's going to happen though. When everybody starts losing their jobs, no one's going to be able to afford to buy the shit from the people who are still working. Right. So it's all going to break down.
Yeah.
So we need to in tandem be figuring out how are we going to slowly, but meaningfully adjust sort of the way we do business and the way that we support each other and support ourselves. And that's a big conversation that people just would rather not have.
Yeah. And just so create laws that protects creators and you know.
I don't think AI should steal things. I've never been a fan of that, but I think, you know, I'm a big fan of it. But my point is, as it relates to immigration, though, is that this is a problem that isn't going away.
Yeah.
And we can either act like, you know, let's build a wall. It's not going to help. You're not going to, you know, it's not going to help. But, you know, we are now, as we wanted, apparently, we wanted to be a global war, I know what I'm saying. We wanted to be connected. We're connected now through the internet and through all of our other media, and we're connected through our policies and our trade organizations and all this shit, which means their problems are our problems. And it also means that I don't sleep well knowing that there are families that are being butchered and raped all over this world, and they want to come here so they don't get butchered and raped. And it's not that I have a problem sending them somewhere else because we don't have the room or the resources, but could we at least, in our country, could we spend a lot of fucking money, because we spend it on everything else, for like an area with Mexico that we both pay for? And look, if you come over and you have asylum, you can't come into the country. You don't have to go back to, you know, some South American shithole that you're running from warlords. We've got a place for you. But you're going to have to wait here. Could be 5 years before you kind of get through the process, but you're going to have food. You're going to be okay. No one's going to hurt you. Could we at least find a middle ground versus just going, let them all in, or push them back to the guys that are raping and killing their kids?
Yeah.
And I just think it's ridiculous that neither solution is acceptable. And instead of finding a solution, we're just push them back. Oh, ship them to New York. It's dumb. We're just a bunch of fucking idiots. We're not evolved. We are not evolved enough yet to have the life we have, and we better fucking figure it out, or we won't.
I mean, right now the rules are kind of strange about immigration in Denmark, because in this year, I mean, we've had several cases, I remember, of people who I think we can all agree shouldn't be deported, but yet are for some strange reason, you know, because of the rules. You have a young girl who studies at the university who is fluent in Danish or whatever, and because of some weird quirk about the rules relating to when she deported. She's just deported, and it's just so weird. I mean, But I think our audience hate talking about policy. Politics.
Mine does too. So I like to come on your show and kill your ratings, because on mine, I have to be real careful, because I love talking politics, but a lot of times, like, this is not the show for it, Jaffe. Put it in a bottle. Talk about it on a different show. I hear you.
We're headed to the end of this episode.
Yeah, I have to run because my dope will be here any minute. So let's wrap it up, boys.
Yes, exactly. Do we have a quick prediction for what's going to happen in the video game industry in 2024, David Jaffe?
Nothing clever, something everybody else is saying. I think we're going to continue to see layoffs and the big companies sort of shedding a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think this is the year, especially towards the end. And I don't mean this like, just wait, Xbox may not pull up. They may be horrible forever. I don't have a dog in the fight. But if Xbox is going to really become meaningful in the space beyond where they are, this is the year it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because either all of their bets are coming due, or all of their, you know, Microsoft is going to be putting out the Call of Duty shit and the Activision shit, and they're going to have some of their first party shit. And if that doesn't work, or those are terrible, or those get delayed or whatever, then you've got a great vision with a team that just historically can't run product development, right?
Yeah.
Or it's going to work and the worm is going to start to turn. So that's a prediction, which I think this is the year that we're going to see if that vision is going to pay off. I think Sony is
headed into a storm, right?
Well, it doesn't have to be. You know, I would advise anybody who's curious about stuff like this to watch the Iwata Nintendo president. He's dead now. Great leader from GDC, where he talked about the inspiration to create the 2DS and the Wii U. because it was when they realized what they were doing, even though they ruled the roost back in the day, they didn't anymore. And instead of just continuing to try the same thing, they said, let's disrupt this market and bring some new things to it. Mm-hmm. I think if Sony were to do something like that, I think they're going to be right back where they were. I think it's a great company. I think the people who run it,
I agree.
A lot of them are really smart and they're really on the cutting edge of tech and they love that shit. But I think they've built themselves a home on a foundation of very shaky ground these days. And if they just continue going down that road, clearly Jim Ryan's take on service games wasn't necessarily the right.
No.
But I can't fault him for assuming it was. Everybody assumed it was. But they got to come up with something beyond what they're just doing. And they probably are. They're not idiots. I'm sure they're trying to think it and they haven't shared it yet. But if this is just more of the same we get this year, some remasters, one game, it's a one and done game. I think they're in a lot of trouble when it comes to sort of moving ahead. The industry has changed. The consumer has changed. Kids don't care as much about production value. Nope. They like Roblox. They like Fortnite. They like Among Us. That's what they're playing.
I actually talked to. We did learn. We
did learn from the Insomniac leak that the tone, from some internal communications, that PlayStation acknowledged that their model was outdated. I think they said, and that game as a service was not a good bet, and that
but it takes time for them to change.
In the direction of streaming.
For them to change this.
But it's just to add that I think they are aware of this. I think they are aware that they need to change their strategy more towards streaming. I mean, there's rumors that that some of these plans leaked that the newer version of PlayStation Plus is going to include a stronger push into streaming to mobile and TV and whatever. So I think they're aware of this. But the point is also, like you were just about to say, Mon, is that it takes a long time to create these changes. I mean, we don't measure the development time of new games and projects in months. We measure. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, fellas.
It's okay. It's okay. So
we don't measure it in months. We measure it in years, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the meantime,
now he's in a phone call.
His dope is here. Yeah. Okay. So I was just about to say that I had a conversation. With this young kid.
I got to go get my dope. I'm happy to stay on and come back to finish this up, or we can wrap it up now. But
I'll just finish, and you can come back and say goodbye.
Got it. I'll be back with my dope.
Do that. See you in a bit, Jaffe.
Sounds great.
All right, man.
Okay. Just stay on. Oh, okay. Great.
I'm still here.
Yeah, great. So I had a conversation, Nikolai, with a young kid. I was in Legoland with this young kid, and
of course,
he said to me something that was deeply disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
He said to me, I asked him, "What's your favorite kind of games? What's your favorite game?" And he said, "I just like games where I can buy stuff, like in Fortnite, where I can buy a skin." And so I said, but what kind of game do you like? I like games that just where I can buy stuff. And that was my head exploded.
Oh my God. I had a similar experience with my nephew because we discussed Overwatch, and I said, Overwatch 2, the nice thing is that they got rid of all the loot box. I mean, that's great, right? And he was like, no, I missed the loot boxes. Yeah. They were great. I mean, they were so fun, so satisfying to open up the loot boxes.
Yeah, that's extremely scary. Okay, yeah. But yeah, so I don't know what kind of future we're headed to. No. The kind of games we play.
The kind of future where Call of Duty has Nicki Minaj running around with a diamond-coated AK-47. I mean, that's just fuck. I'm getting too old for this shit. At some point, I need to just stop playing video games. No, just realize that I'm too old.
Yeah, but
I'm not ready for this change.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference in what kind of games the generations of people play.
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely interesting for the future, because I think game as a service games has come to stay. But I will say, I think we are headed into a year where the development of them, there's been so many game as a service games in development, and I think we're scaling back on that.
Looks like it.
Yeah. So
I think we have a shared responsibility of making sure that the next generation of gamers are raised in the values, the old values.
Yeah. So I don't know how long this will take before Jaffe is back, and I feel a little weird talking English still.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing in a way. Now we can reach an international audience with our podcast.
Yeah, for this episode only.
For this episode, no, I think we should consider doing it only exclusively in English. From now on.
I don't think so.
We're opening up a much larger audience. No, I don't think that's a good idea, because then we'll be competing with other English speaking podcasts, and let's be honest, we don't have a fucking chance. How does it work? Is some delivery guy coming up with?
I don't know. Is
it like ordering food online?
I have never done. I've never done drugs. I have never. I'm so afraid.
Just vault some dope.
I have never. I'm super. So this is a true story. I don't know if I've ever told this ever. But once I was heading to work.
Oh my god! What's going on?
What was that?
I don't know.
Oh my god!
I thought it was. I thought I heard voices in my head.
So we were just talking about how does it work getting dope?
Is it like ordering food online? It basically is, right?
They brought me a little bag. I ordered it on the computer. Hey, baby. Okay, I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah.
I ordered it on the computer, and they bring me dope. I call it dope because when I started calling it dope, it was based on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It was supposed to be old fashioned and charming and stupid, but now it's just what I call it. And people go, "Who calls it dope?" And I'm like, "I'm not serious, you idiot." I get a little card. I'm unboxing the dope. I get a little card of savings.
Wait,
dope unboxing.
Are we gonna get in trouble for this, Mon?
No.
I mean, this is our first.
It's legal. It's legal where I am.
Okay, great.
Our first unboxing of recreational drugs.
Our first unboxing ever, and it's dope.
Yeah,
that's great. Gelato live resin flavor stick, banana Ritz. There
David,
wow.
David, I just want to say thank you so much for being on this podcast. It has been incredibly fun talking to you.
Really fun.
You have so many great perspectives, and it's always nice hearing your opinions. And I think if you have had fun listening to this episode,
I had a great time.
Oh, I was talking to the audience.
Fuck you then.
No. So if you, the audience, have had a good time listening to David as I have, you should definitely check him out on YouTube, on David Jaffe.
It's David Jaffe Games and Twitter. David Scott Jaffe. Just Google me, motherfucker. Come find me. Look, I mean, seriously, we're watching Zombie Ass in about 20 minutes. That's how much fun we're having. Get your ass over to the goddamn Gabbin and Games and hang out with us. Yeah, man, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys putting up with my shenanigans. It's always fun to talk games, and a little things get worse here in America. Somebody make up the guest room. I'm heading over.
If you wanna, that sounds great. If you wanna, come back to our podcast at some point later down the road, then I promise we'll be more read up on the politics.
The politics,
the contemporary stuff.
I'll come on whenever you guys will have me. This is a fun conversation. If your audience feels like I'm a valuable asset to hear again, all you got to do is call.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
All right, fellas, I'm off. Be well, be safe. Bye, everybody.
Bye.